Good evening. We're going to go a little bit out of order on the agenda, but according to plan, we worked out with people. Andrew is coming from out of town, so he'll be a little bit on the late side, but Bruce Tisco's here to discuss the DPW portion of the capital plan. So we'll start right away.
What do you want? Right.
Yeah, that's great.
But you don't have a crowd here, right?
It's not very hard to have standing at the moment.
Good evening.
I know.
Hi, everybody. How's everybody doing? Haven't seen you since last year.
Yeah.
I told Alan like one time, I said, I really miss you guys. I'm Bruce Thibodeau, the Public Works Director, for those that don't know me, and I'm in charge of obviously all the public works, including water and sewer enterprise fund, and occasionally the youth. Rick does such a great job. It's an easy job. So I thought I'd go through my ones on public works first. How's that work?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. The first one, my first priority, and that's on page 45.
Lynn, could you give a 60-second dissertation about the overall layout of this for those who haven't had
The layout of the book?
layout of the book and experience, basically, the overall flow. I don't
Good
know
point.
if
No, good point.
it's just.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does anybody need to know the process as far as how the whole CIP process works from beginning to end?
I don't
or-
think it's hard, but yeah, could do that too.
Okay, around September time, the instructions go out to all the departments from the town manager and myself for starting to implement the capital improvement plan for the 5-year forecast. Instructions are pretty much detailed to let them know that they have to look at last year's submittals to make sure they're following the same plan and any new and added additions to the 5th year. And if they are making any changes to the prior year plan, they have to note it and have full explanation and justification for the changes. Some of the changes are minor, might be costs associated with certain things, or project might be decided to be pushed out to later years. Once the departments submit and complete their capital improvement recommendations, goes to the town manager. The town manager and myself and the assistant town manager review all of the projects. The assistant town manager and myself go through them, and we do the rating criteria based on the instructions in the book. I'll tell you what page. It's on page 12, the criteria point summary, and then the criteria point
You assign the points, or
explanations.
do you review what's specifically given to you?
What's that?
Do you assign the points?
Ray does.
Ray does?
Right,
Okay.
right, but it's a criteria point based on the instructions in the book, and we look at each individual project and rate it based on the criteria, and then I add up all the points and put it into an Excel spreadsheet, which is in the book to show you the totals for each project. The town manager, myself, and the assistant town manager then will meet with the department heads, division directors, to review their projects, and we'll make recommendations. They'll agree or disagree, we'll pull things off. We might add something that we know needs to be added that we've been talking about all prior year, and somebody didn't remember, because I have a little tickler file, like the elder service van last year somehow got slipped by. This year we made sure it got put in here, there are things like that. So once that's all completed, then I start the process of putting the book together. I have all my Excel spreadsheets, I tally everything up, we do some ratios, we do the debt ratio, things like that, do the forecast for the debt out for the 5 years, to make sure that we're within our percentage points based on the policy. And then I gather everything together and put it into the book, summarize it by general fund, water, and sewer. And it's just distributed to the Board of Selectmen, and then, of course, on to you guys. It has to follow the recommendations of both the Finance Committee and the Board of Selectmen to be presented at town meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome.
So, in our book now, we'll be starting on what page?
Well, my first.
Yeah, I mean,
is-
I'm sorry I should have prefaced it a little bit. So when Andrew comes later, he'll give more of the 30,000 foot view, kind of talk about the plan as a whole. And he would normally do that first, but like I said,
Yes,
it made
you
sense
would,
to go with
absolutely.
We're getting into the detail now, Bruce.
Right, we're going right into the detail.
Right,
yeah.
bring to
Why?
detail.
Nothing changed, Bruce.
I know.
And it starts on page 45.
45 is my
This is
first,
first project.
first request, and I just lost it. Oh, anyways,
You let us know.
let me do a little overview of the, of that, yeah, good.
Anything new, Bruce, that was different than last, you can let us know as we go through.
Yep.
Because, I don't know, maybe all of us hadn't have a chance to compare
Pretty
two different
much-
formats again, you know.
Yeah, that's pretty much in the water.
Yeah.
The Public Works and sewer's a little change, but Public Works isn't any change at
Everything's
all.
pretty much was forecasted.
Yeah. And the main part of the Public Works is the paving management program, and I've told, gone through this before with the group, but for those that weren't here, it's pretty sophisticated. We have every road in town reviewed. Somebody goes through, we have a consultant that knows roadway repair and rates every road. They actually drive down every one of them and give a rating, and it's an RSR rating. And the attachment that goes along with my request is basically that plan. And what happens is we take all their ratings and their estimates of what needs to be done on the roads, and we massage it, take a look at it, and see what needs to be done. We've had it completely reviewed 2 times now. The first time was about 6 years ago when we started this plan, and then again last year. Every 5 years, we like to do that. And from all those ratings and the type of repairs that need to be done, we then put together our 5-year plan. And that doesn't mean that it's completely cast in concrete, because then what we do after every year is kind of look at what happened during the winter and what, if the road deteriorated faster than we thought, and maybe some other issues might come in, some development might happen, somebody dug up the street, or something might happen, move a street here or there. As I tell everybody, it's really not cabinet making, it's, it's kind of like, what's going on. So, and then the way we divide that out is we have 2 sources of funding for our roadway repairs. And one of them is the state chapter 90, which comes from the gas tax. And we get about $860,000 a year from that, which is pretty good for a town this size. A lot of my counterparts don't get as much as that, which is very good. And then we supplement that with about $400,000 a year from off the local funds, the town meeting votes.
Yep.
And the way we divide that out is we try to use the Chapter 90 money for the major roads. Roads like, I use this example, but we've got a lot of these paved, but Johnson Street, Salem Street, and then some of the other kind of local collectors, what they call arterials, those are arterials, and then the collectors are the ones that kind of go between them, like Summer Street and those type of things. And then we use the money from the local funds to direct them towards the subdivision roads, the back roads that never really get touched. And we're very fortunate that this program's been put together, and the finance committee and selectmen in town meeting has supported this, because otherwise there's no way, even though it sounds like a lot of money, we would never get to all the roads that we have to get to every
So
year
are
if
we-
we didn't use the local funds.
Are we used there for the roads that we do, North Andover, over taxpayers' fund? Is that the usual 5 to 10 miles of roads?
No, about 10 miles of road is the whole program.
10 miles of road is the whole program.
Yeah.
And of that, then we're doing 400,000.
About 40%, yeah, rough number, depending on the road. And now, and then just one thing that I want to put in here, that's not on roads 114 or 125, because those are not our roads. I don't have any jurisdiction, or the town doesn't have any jurisdiction, and you can't use Chapter 90 on that. For instance, there's a little section known until this past year, I didn't even know it, there's a little section of Sutton Street that goes from the dance studio to 495, that's state highway. And I wanted to pay, and I couldn't, because I can't use Chapter 90. So I had to get them to pay. And it's really not high on their radar screen, as you can imagine. So that's just to give you an idea of some of the things that goes on with that. So we've been able to do about 10 roads or more a year, and a very successful program. We do that through, we have set contracts that we set up, 3-year contracts for paving and raising the structures and milling and all the different things that we do for that, and for fixing the catch basins and all that stuff. And so we're ready to go. When the money's ready, we're ready to go. So what happens usually is we use the Chapter 90 money in the spring. So that's what we'll do. We'll put in our request for Chapter 90 now in the next month or so. And we'll be ready to fund those roads in the spring. And then when we get the money available on July 1st, then we go into the program to do the other ones. So it's been very successful. And I know everybody wants to ask if there are roads on it, but we really do try to stick to we really do try to stick to the ratings that are on that table that you see there, the RSR ratings. You know, sometimes some are higher. You know, again, if we're doing a road and there's another 200 feet and the rating might be a little high, we're going to do that because we'll never come back to that. So that's kind of the distinction. Okay. And the first part of it, when you see it, is the crack sealing, and that's the way you do this is you concentrate on the roads that you've already done to do the crack sealing, so that you can defer the major maintenance until later on. So we do a lot of crack sealing every year as well. Now, we were fortunate in the last year, 2 years, to get about 120-something thousand from the state to use because of the very tough winters we had. And what was nice about that is you could use that on things that might not be eligible or might require more approvals. You could use that to do a lot of different things, you know, shorter roads and get outside the Chapter 90 requirements, which was really good. We used a lot of it last year to fix a lot of the sinking catch basins and manhole covers and all that. So we did about 100 and something of those last year. So that's basically the pavement management, and that's the biggest part of my request. Any questions on that?
I just wanted to ask you, Bruce, you know, just the regular, like, after the winter season, filling holes, is that just in your budget?
Yeah, that's the budget.
Okay.
Yeah. So potholes, we also have money in the regular budget to do kind of repairs and short sections and maybe some of the berms that get ripped up and those type of things. Yeah.
Okay.
Is there any money in the budget for improvements? This all sounds like repairs.
No, a lot of what we're doing right now, the pavement management is really improving major long sections of road. So you might, and not necessarily redesigning them or rebuilding them. In some cases, you might be. We did some rebuild on Pleasant Street on Middlesex Street the last couple of years. But the repairs usually come out of the budget, and this is out of the CIP. Good. So that the second one, what page is that? Okay, the second one is, every year, what we do is we direct about, is it 75,000 towards, in this came towards sidewalks. And this came about, years ago, there was a lot of requests when I first came here to build new sidewalks. And yet we had a tremendous amount of requests to fix the old ones. And so what we thought that what we've been hearing a lot from the MBTA lately is that we fix what we have before we build any more. So, and that's what we've been doing. We've been directing about 75,000. And that usually goes towards something that would be around the schools, for access to the schools, and it's not building new ones, it's repairing old ones. And around some of the housing authority, the elderly housing, that type of thing, downtown, those type of things. And we've been pretty successful, and we have a very long list of it. There's no shortage of finding something to spend that money on.
Didn't I hear something about, we had gotten a grant for the safe routes to
Yep.
school?
Yep.
Is that?
That's a completely
that's
different program,
separate.
but I'll go into, that's a good, and it's a good thing to talk about, is that's a program that's federally and state funded.
Mhm.
And we didn't have to spend any money on that except some of our own work to if we had to take any land or something like that, or get easements.
Mhm.
And that's that's from Green Street up Parker up to the middle school. And it's quite a bit of money. It's been bid. competitively bid by the state. We just kind of, we didn't even design it. It's the state, Mass DOT's designers that designed it. Worked very well. They're actually a company in Lawrence, TEC. And they did a nice job. Worked with us, worked with Gene Willis, the town engineer, and that's been bid, and it's gonna start construction in the spring. And a local company won it.
Now, will that be something that they try to do every year for different, focusing on
No.
different schools, or was it the middle school that was determined to be particularly?
That came
Dicey.
from an evaluation of all.
Of all the routes.
All the routes, and that one was picked as the, and it got the high eligibility, and then, yeah, we're very lucky to have that. There's a lot of competition.
Yeah, yeah.
And who was the local company that won the bid?
Tropiano, they're right down the road.
In North Andover.
North Andover, they're right
Awesome.
on the line down here.
Bruce, I just noticed that they are the same streets, or the same sidewalks being repaired like last year. Is this something,
And we got the wrong one in there.
Yeah.
We do, the CIP 15.
so you normally move on to different,
That's what printed when
We
we
printed?
printed
Yeah.
them.
so you move on to different.
Yeah, sorry about that.
And I have to apologize for that, because let me explain to you. I created this book, and then inadvertently got thrown away, my original. So I had to recreate it all. So in recreating it, I must have printed the wrong one from the CIP software. So I'll take the fault for
Okay, I
that
don't-
one,
yeah,
please.
yeah.
That wasn't you, that was myself, and I'll give you guys a corrected page for that.
Good pickup with that.
Yeah. Oh,
And
No, I
also,
You have no idea.
You caught us, we
Anything else
keep
on
putting the same
Tom's part?
sidewalks in every year.
Thank you, Thomas.
I was just
Yeah.
wondering.
Yeah, no, I don't blame you.
You didn't
Page
get around to
58.
We do change it.
maybe marble.
Doing those double bids.
Yeah, I'll give you a corrected page to give
And you know, Bruce, another question.
Yep.
You know, I get my hopes up when I see sidewalk repair, that it's going to be the, what is it, the concrete?
The what? I'm sorry.
I get my hopes up that it's going to be like the concrete, but it's the blacktop sidewalks, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
It's 3 times more expensive.
No, I know.
Yeah.
No, I just think of the aesthetic, you know, beauty of the old sidewalks in the old part of town that,
This.
but I understand.
And the other issue with that is, the concrete sidewalks in a very tree-lined road don't hold up very well. With the hot top guts, we can repair it easier. When the trees pop up, the concrete panels, you know, it takes a lot to redo those. So that's one of the reasons. And I don't know if you were on finance, I might have told this before, but we went to do the sidewalks down near the Thompson School, this is 5 or 6 years ago now. And we were out there ready to do all that, and we started marking the trees that we're gonna take down, and that was the end of those sidewalks.
Trees.
The tree people
No
went
for those.
out over.
Coming down.
Yeah, no trees.
Yeah,
yeah.
no
Well, the
trees.
winter moths may win yet.
The other ones are
Page 59. The sweeper?
The sweeper and the dump truck?
This is my really special request this year, because I'm spending, this is for a brand new sweeper. And we have one employee that's just fantastic at this. He can pretty much get the whole town done by July if he has the right equipment, or even before July. And we don't have to go out to contractors, and in the last couple of years, we tried to use Andovers, and they were helpful, but they're busy doing theirs. And so we've had to put about $5,000 to $10,000 a year into our sweeper, and it's well beyond. It's useful life, so we're getting a new state-of-the-art sweeper. And we're gonna fund that kind of both a little bit on my budget and on the CIP.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
That was
So was this
like
additional?
number 3 priority.
That's my number 3 priority, yeah, I desperately need one. It's been in the plan for a while.
And there's a 4 and a 5.
There is a 4 and a 5.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we got a lot of them this year.
Yeah.
The other piece of equipment is, every couple of years, we replace our snow fighting equipment. And this one is, well, I think a couple of years ago, we got one, and then this is another one. We're replacing those old spreaders in plow trucks. They'll take quite a beating.
So back on the sweeper, you're going to take you're doing, what is it, 197. And in addition to that, you're going to squeeze some out of your department?
No, that-
Right, the recommendation from the town manager is only 185, the balance is
185.
gonna come out of his budget.
The balance will come
Yeah, that's, we're putting that together now, that's what. So the total is what, 97?
Right.
Maybe it's just
So I
asking,
don't-
I didn't pay attention, so are you gonna keep the old one?
No.
So you're gonna scrap
that's-
it, or
We're gonna.
get some money for it? or-
Yes, we always, the one thing on the state contracts, but some of the, they're required to take in trade, so we'll trade it in. Yeah. It's not really, just believe me, if we get anything for it, we'll be very happy.
And I just wanna make a note so that you understand, when you're looking at the capital reports from the departments, which is their requests, necessarily, the recommendations from the town manager might be less, because we've determined that they will spend and supply some of their funding from the budgets as well. So I don't go in and change these, because these are their original requests, and I wanna keep them original, and I don't wanna make any changes. So that's why we have the two different recommendations, the recommendation sheet and the request sheet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which we'll get later. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
Bruce-
well, it's in the front of the book,
The front.
so the town manager's recommended. So if you were to look at this one, you'd see that he
You
only
would see the difference
recommended
between the two,
185.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
So that was the number that was in last year, was 185.
Correct,
Right.
right, and
So
we
we'll
said
keep
that
that.
we weren't gonna,
Then you
we
finally
were
got
keeping
a real
it
quote,
funding.
then, right?
Yeah, and it's been in there for a few years, so we found out
I think it was last year too.
Is there only one type of sweeper around, or you get multiple quotes?
We'll get through the whole town once, and then
No, I mean-
multiple times, we'll get the downtown areas.
No, I mean the type of, so you're purchasing a new one, so we see only one quote, right? That's the.
Yeah, that's the quote for putting these together, we'll probably, that's the state bid contract. So in other words, that we don't need to go out and contract with someone else to do this. They've already done all that procurement in contract.
Somebody wanted for the state.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's, yeah, we may look at a couple of different ones. That's pretty competitive for the Pelican suite.
I think it always comes up between buying and leasing. Is this something, especially vehicles, you know?
I don't know that they lease sweepers, do they?
It plus, but in the long run, and I'm not sure there's some issues.
Beneficial to
Yeah,
that,
there's some
because-
issues with the procurement on that. So it's very difficult.
Plus, the life of it is probably less than what the lease would be.
Yeah.
So it's kind of difficult, because they get beat.
Yeah. And just going back to the request before that, the other one was the water and High Street intersection and streetscape. That's a program that we've been doing over the last few years. And this is for the second part of this. And, you know, if you have been downtown along High and Water, you can see the new lights. I think they're pretty bright. They're nice. They look great against the streetscape down there with the mill and everything. They did a nice job. It's really, the people that work down there are very happy with that, you know, after hours when they're. So the next phase of that is to redo the intersection of High, Water, and Elm. If you've ever been through there, you know it's a challenge. We've tried to improve it a little bit by making a three-way this year. It'll continue to be a three-way, but what we're trying to do is, the next part of this will be to align it so that when you're going down on Water Street, you kind of go straight across instead of the little jag. And then the other thing that we want to do with that is make pedestrian access through there, particularly handicap, much better. And right now, with the way the grades are and everything, the handicap accessibility there is not the way it's supposed to be.
It still can be a crazy intersection.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it is.
I had somebody come through the other day on Water Street, like Mr. Magoo. You know, it was like, I was coming up High Street, you know.
It's definitely a learning, you know, if you've lived here for a long time, it's an acquired taste of all these different intersections. There's more than just that one. And then the other thing, that a road goes along and then takes a right, you know.
Yeah.
It's pretty funny. So, Dale Street.
Yeah.
Just a lot of
Salem
them.
Street, you know.
A lot more people, a lot more traffic.
Yeah, now than in the old days. Yeah, we're looking at a number of them. The next one we're looking at, and we may be able to do that with some of the chapter 90s to, in some budget money, we're looking at trying to improve Sutton and High. That's dodgems there too sometimes.
Yeah.
Especially with the mills getting very busy now and the traffic on Sutton Street.
Yeah.
And then every time I see the people from Brooks, they're asking me to do something with them. Anyways.
So I don't know if you just mentioned that, so how do we decide to spend $500,000 or so, or that money on that intersection, you know, since there are so many? I mean, how you pick, you know, you probably have a list of.
Yep, that's a good question. This all came about back, or really before I've been here, about 10 years ago, with improvements for in the town decided, at that time, there was interest in fixing this area up, is the machine shop village. And so this is sort of like, and part of that was to redo those roads down there. We did Elm Street, remember years ago, Elm Street was redone, all the way down, new curbs, new sidewalks, and that. So then the next phase was to get the street lights down along there, and then the intersection done. And then the third phase will be to do the streetscape along Water Street. And that's how that whole project came about.
So it's part of an economic development?
Right, yeah, in a historic,
Planning is-
economic development in a historic district.
But there wasn't a master plan that,
Well, that was pretty much the master plan, I just, for that one area.
For-
not-
but
right.
there's nothing called a,
No,
okay.
For the town, for that.
That's just something that got worked out and continued.
yeah.
Originally, that wasn't a
Wait a minute.
street, Tom.
Hmm?
That was just mill access, it had gates on it at one time. If you look at the historic photographs, High Street had a gate right, at the intersection, and then another gate down at the other end.
Huh, but there's no master development plan for the town?
There is a master plan for the whole town, but whether it focuses on which roadways we're gonna improve and things like that, I can't say that that's all in there, like, you're gonna improve this more than the other, but I know that right now, Eric's working on a Mass Works grant for the whole downtown area, so
Right.
focusing on it.
Yeah, I mean, the master plan is fairly out of date. I'd say it's at least 13 or 14 years
Yeah.
old. And I know Andrew had talked even at the beginning of the year about doing a full sort of rewrite of the master plan.
Well, that's what Eric was talking about in our last meeting,
Mhm.
Right.
but it's that old.
Yes. And I don't know that.
And there's the facilities master plan,
One
which
of
is
the
separate.
things.
That's
Facilities
separate.
master
That's
plan.
separate.
And there's-
That's
yeah.
separate. Right,
That
master plan is
yeah,
roads.
is the whole,
The
yeah.
the master plan is like economic development and all those sort of things coming together,
Yeah,
like
it's
a big view of the whole.
It's an open
town.
space
Mhm.
master plan,
Right.
open space plan as well. That has a lot to do with, the parks and the recreation areas.
Well, it would be interesting to get an update.
Yes,
Otherwise, it seems like so, opportunistic, so random, and I'm sure it's not.
Yeah.
It's certainly an unfair statement, but especially when you look at, what is downtown now? Is this now actually developing into a downtown, or is Old Main Street still downtown?
Yeah, it's good
You know,
questions. Yeah.
So where's the focus going forward?
Yeah, and it's, and I know when, first couple of years I was here, we did a lot of work on Main Street as well. We repaved it, did a lot of sidewalk, bump outs, and, but that needs to, that again, needs to be looked at. I think that's part of what Eric and staff will look at. He and I have had a lot of discussions he's had discussions with a lot of the business owners in the mill and on Main Street to decide what we're gonna do. And we'd like to put it in as a Mass Works grant, which would be nice, a few $1 million. And then then we would maybe improve those intersections a little bit better if that becomes the major focus.
What is the timing on completing a draft of the new master plan?
I think those are like multi-year, I mean, from what I've heard, I think they're like, it's like definitely like a year-long project.
So if we started now, we might see something next year, or maybe past 2 budgets.
Right, it might.
Yeah.
Probably, yeah.
Could take that long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I looked at the old one, I know it's like 300 or 400 pages.
Wow.
So.
But maybe a good
Yeah,
time
and you'd have to get funding
to
for
get this.
developing that
Right.
master
Well,
plan
it's
into the
like-
budget cycle, so you've gotta add that in as well. Cause I
Yeah,
mean,
it's
we've
about a
already
year
got
in
funding
advance.
for the next facilities plan in here, so if you wanna
So
get
we're gonna
funding
need to see
for,
that, we need
Yeah.
it in this one, right? Okay.
yeah,
We'll
You
spend it,
appropriate
you know,
the $300,000
planning
it
time.
takes to come
yeah,
up with a
budget and then.
plan.
money.
Yeah.
Say, Bruce, talking about intersections and all that reminds me, you know, they're doing a sidewalk on Green Street. And then wasn't there talk about Green Street and Mass Ave, that intersection?
That's all gonna be improved as part of the,
Okay, part of it, so with the state.
part of the Safe Routes to
Safe Routes
School.
to
Oh, yeah,
School.
redoing that whole intersection.
Great.
Right from Mass Ave all the way up to the Parker Green Street one as well.
Okay, I thought I'd heard talk
Yeah,
about that.
it's nice, it's gonna be more of a 90,
Yeah, that'll be good.
that needs improvement as well.
Yeah.
Liz, you just said something, but I don't see any funding for that.
Oh, no, that's
Oh,
what
it
we're,
goes separate?
that's what we're saying, like,
There's
so,
funding for the next phase of the
Phase of the
facility.
facility
Right,
master
but there's
plan.
nothing mentioned for the master.
right.
No, not for the master, but that's what I'm saying, like we're doing for the facilities,
Right.
they'd have to start a ball rolling on the general master plan to get the funding to do the studies to
Okay.
develop it.
Yeah, from the study.
Yeah, I mean, I've learned nothing, it's a process. Good.
You don't need another dump truck, do you, Bruce?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just asked for one, remember?
How many dump trucks are in here? Cause I'm seeing funding,
I see them all over
Yes,
town.
every couple, every,
so you
so
have.
many years we have planned into and retire.
Okay, so you're gonna be getting, over the course of the remainder of this capital plan, you're getting 3 total.
Right.
Okay, so I'm looking,
Very
thinking,
spread.
wow, that's an expensive dump truck.
Yeah, no.
Did you not get one that was
Yes, we
like
did.
a
That's worked out.
fancy Swiss Army knife kind of thing?
Yeah, when we, like I said, when we were
With
getting
all the
that one,
attachments?
I
All the
wouldn't do,
attachments.
I wouldn't do that every time, because they're all on the expensive side, but that's been great. We have multiple bodies that we can move on and on.
You're gonna wear anyways.
Yeah, and, you know, the creativity of my staff is pretty good. They'll put the bobcats and things in it when it's on the ground and pull it up onto the truck and then bring it to the park that they wanna work in. It's pretty funny. We do a good job, so it has multi-use. It's great. Yeah. I wanna go to the sewer. Page 109, I think. Hmm? 115 is the, yeah.
Yeah,
109 is the.
again, it's the
yeah.
criteria
Right.
spreadsheet.
So,
Recommendation.
yeah, it's really just one in that, and that's where there's a little bit of a change. And the reason that we put that in there, and that's not all funded by the, obviously, Lynn's funded it through retained earnings.
Yep.
And this is to, we have 22 sewer pump stations of varying sizes. The money from the past few years has been directed towards the redo of the raised pond. We're completely rebuilding that, we're building a new one right next door to it. It's already started, if you've been by there, they started clearing the trees.
This is a pump station.
This is a sewage pump station,
Station,
yeah, yeah, there's the old ones next to it, it's right on the lake.
Mhm.
And what we did was, it's pretty antiquated, it was built by developers, really, and then turned over to the town years ago, and then added to and added to and added to, and it's right on the edge of the lake, so we felt that that was a big priority, is to get it up out of the flood zone. It won't be really very, you know, it's a little farther away from the lake, but it's not completely away. It's out of the floodplain.
The old one was in the floodplain?
Oh, yeah, yeah, that's why the tanks are all strapped down.
They float away.
Yeah, so in major storms,
Yeah.
we'd have to put big trash pumps down there to pump into manholes to supplement. So now this one is gonna be able to handle all that. So that one's underbuilt, but that was already asked for, approved, and it's now under construction, water line construction soon. So we continue to put money in the CIP to improve all the other pump stations. And the first thing that we're gonna do, and why it's bumped up a little bit, is we're gonna do what is basically similar to what you were asking about the master plan. I'm gonna do a master plan and have someone come in and evaluate everything we need in each one of those 21 pump stations, and then put a capital plan together of what we need to do. I don't think they're gonna be full replacements, but there's pumps and I mean, we're getting to the useful life of the generators, for instance, and this year we're gonna have to put one up at Butcher Boys pump station, and we gotta find that money out of the budget for that, so.
You said
So we're
most
gonna
of-
look at that so that we're not always touching, going into the budget for that.
So do most of the pump stations, Bruce, they have generator backup now? Or
Most
some-
of them, not all of them, but most of them.
And they have a two-pump system where you have a primary and secondary? And you're not running on the secondaries at this point, right?
No, well, what you
you're-
do is you go back and forth.
You do runtime accumulation on.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And most of them, the ones that don't have generated a pretty good sized wet wells and don't really
Yeah,
service a big.
they're gonna have a-
Yeah, and we have all the alarm, coming back to the treatment plant. And the sewer pump station, which is always, that's another thing, the sewer pump stations are all run by the mechanics at the water treatment plant, because it's sort of into their expertise. And Tim Willett, who's my operations manager, handles the distribution and the collection. The treatment plant handles the treatment plant and the pump stations. And we have 4 water pump stations too, as well as the 20-some. So that's basically what's going on there, not an awful lot.
Right, so there'll be no debt issued on this recommendation because we have retained earnings that will offset this cost.
Yeah, another way of saying, yeah.
Nope, no.
So,
No.
so we didn't have that last year, there was always assumed the whole budget cycle we would, raise, it was a net borrowing of 1.3, so that changed now in 1 year, was that
Yep,
an exceptional good year?
the retained earnings have built it up enough.
Plus you have some things coming off, debt
That's correct,
service
we
as
have
well.
debt service falling off, so it's freeing up some available funding.
Because
to
of
use the retained earnings.
the retained earnings, that was a policy that was
Yes, the
developed last
policy
year.
that was, right, put in place, and we are following the policy.
Following the policy.
Yep.
And
Looks
keeping
good.
the retained earnings of the appropriate rate that we said we would within the
Yep,
range.
and because we're not requesting, equal to what we could use the retained earnings, because $150,000 is only a portion of what the amount that we could use. We could use more if we had other projects that he was recommending, but he's not.
Okay.
Because he's not gonna put in more projects than he can really fit into the schedule.
So there's more retained earnings in.
There will be, yes, that's why if you look at the recommendation, we're looking at, we'd be able to use retained earnings throughout this whole 5-year.
Prior to this time, when we didn't have the retained earnings policy, that just didn't show up at all? and we were
Right,
just-
well-
Or was it part of that return to the town?
Now, the retained earnings, the issue with the water and sewer in the past, we would always, every year, if anybody, you've all lived in town for a long time, so every year, we would change the water and sewer rates.
That's
It
right.
would drive me and Bruce nuts.
We'd go crazy.
Every year, we'd have to try and figure out how to base the rates based on what the budget was recommending and what the capital plan was recommending, so that they would only bring the retained earnings in to a certain amount, a certain level and a certain percentage, which wasn't even equal to, a couple months' worth of expenditures. So we weren't building the retained earnings enough to help us if we had any types of emergencies. We wouldn't have anywhere to go to help if something happened and we needed the funding to do it immediately.
If we have a wet year. If we have a wet year, it's not good.
Right.
It's a
So
as you go.
From a utility.
it's been 4 years in a row that, almost 5 years, I think maybe 5 years now, that we have not changed the rates.
The rates, right.
Yeah.
And kept everything steady, and we've been able to build the retained earnings and put the policy in place, and we're following the policy now.
So no borrowing this year
Nope.
on sewer, we're using your retained earnings.
And the same with water.
It's same with water, and you're
Yep.
doing a 5-year master-like plan that's in the works for
Yeah.
updating
Yeah.
the rest of the capital.
And any rate changes?
No rate
No,
changes.
and no
The
rate-
rate changes
again.
are staying the same.
For the whole budget cycle, the next
The
5
whole
years?
budget, Michael.
Yeah.
Well, it's been a lot.
It's been great. I mean, with the policies in place, it makes it a lot easier, because we have something to follow. We're not constantly every year just changing the rates.
Mhm.
I mean,
Yeah, and
if you could see the spreadsheets that me and Bruce had to work on to change these rates, it's,
And then if the
Are
assumptions.
rates very high now?
Because they had
That-
so much
that-
stuff go.
Because I would think, so
I
we
mean, you
can't
gotta
put our
consider
rates
they haven't
very
been
high,
changed
so
for
then
5
we have
years.
to keep them really up.
They've been the
When I
same
get
for
my
5
bill, I
years.
always
So
do it.
everybody
But if
should
we looked at
budget.
our rates that we have now, and we have had 5 or 6 years ago,
5 years ago, they were the same. We haven't changed the rates for going on 5 years, yes.
Yeah.
So this is all good, assuming that we'll have any water.
Interest rates are-
Yeah.
I know, what
I'm saying there's a
Well,
lot
that's
of
true,
things.
it's down, but you know, it always has a way of coming back, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like last winter.
Miraculous,
Yeah.
somehow, it builds back up.
Yeah, it'll back up. We're down, a little bit behind from last year. Yeah, all the
What kind of capital plan do you really have? We talked about the master plan,
Protect the
which
water
is great.
supply.
Yeah, yeah.
And do you have things that you see right now in your crystal ball, actually better than that, that actually says the failure rate in this is gonna be much higher next year, the following year, things like
Well,
that?
most of that is, there's no, that's why I'm doing the master plan on the pump station, because, and I was gonna mention on that. There's really, right now, I don't see anything else, because we've pretty much expanded the sewer system to about where it's gonna be. There isn't any real stomach to expand it any further into other areas, because it'll cost people a lot of money because of the betterment charges.
Mhm.
So it isn't a lot to spend on in the collection system. The place that we want to modernize and get these pump stations in good shape, and possibly look at eliminating some of the pump stations that we have. I'd like to see, we've already we eliminated a water pump station this year, which was great. I'd like to eliminate some sewer pump stations if we could. So that's where, you know, like I said, we have some retained earnings, but I'm not gonna make up projects. I wanna more focus it on the sewer pump stations where I see the issues. And I wanna find out which ones we need to fix or upgrade or maybe eliminate, you know, now. On the water system, sort of the same thing on the distribution. We've, over the years, they did a great job of putting in a very good and reliable distribution system. We have mostly ductile iron everywhere. You know, and where we don't have ductile iron, it's cast iron lined. It's the big pipes, you know, so everything's in pretty good shape. We have something in there to do some changes, additions later on in the plan, so we look at that. Tim's pretty good at knowing where his issues are and what's gonna fail. Of course, last year, we didn't know that we were gonna lose the bolts off of major valve out on Salem Street and put people out of water for 29 hours. That was Bruce's biggest nightmare. Anybody wanna know?
That was, yeah, oh, that was bad, yeah.
That was at the end of a great winter.
Underground
we do.
stuff?
Hmm?
Underground
Yeah,
pipes?
that was underground, yeah, that was a 60-year-old pipe, and the bolts on the 12-inch corroded and blew the top off the. And I didn't even get a thank you note from the Ipswich Rivershed. I dumped 3 million gallons of water into the Ipswich watershed. And that's a depressed basin, they didn't even thank me.
Wow.
PBD
So-
tanks, you're right.
Huh?
PBD tank?
Yeah, no, Topsfield. I think.
Topsfield.
Topsfield, yeah, Topsfield. So to get back to your question, and then, so the biggest area that I have, obviously, for that type of thing is the water treatment plant. And I think we've told everybody this the last few years we've been here, we're slowly hitting those things. We've got the emergency power straightened out now. Everything's on emergency power up there. We now have, we're about to bid the control computer, the new control computer. We done a number of other, the whole plant has been upgraded for the HVAC and the new roof. And the next big phase, and the one that I'm the biggest worried about, and I've been focusing on, is the ozone system, which is the guts of it's the thing that goes after all the really bad stuff that we don't want to be drinking, and it, you know, disinfects and clears and so forth. And that's pretty antiquated now. It's 20-some odd years old. We can't get the parts. We bought all the parts, we get them all stocked up there so we can keep it going. And last year, it was approved for the preliminary design. This year, we have the final design in there, and then we kind of brought everything. I thought at one point we might be able to phase some of this, but it's really not a phase type of a system. We've got to take the old one out, put the new one in, and that's what's
Different
gonna happen.
technology?
It's gonna be basically the same, but it's gonna be a lot more modern. It's still gonna be an ozone system, but it's gonna be, you know, more state-of-the-art.
Less energy requirements.
Hmm?
Less energy.
Oh, yeah. Oh, this is the last real, this thing's hard. This thing takes a lot of energy, and we're gonna reduce that quite a bit. do the one.
So is that what that 300,000
The-
total
No,
is?
so that would be,
Or is that just the plan?
so I think we've sort of
Moved on to
the water.
Water.
So for
Yeah, we
sewer,
kinda-
the major
on
thing
this one,
we're
I
doing this
kinda
year, the
segued
study.
into it on this
Yeah.
question here, so
Okay,
on,
so-
if
So
you
the-
look at, starts on 127 and then it goes with the,
So Bruce, how are you gonna actually do the cutover? How are you gonna manage the transition?
yeah,
I mean,
that's,
this is like,
yeah, it's gonna be
you
interesting.
got enough barrack
but-
space there to do all this?
Oh, yeah, yeah, there's some there, and then we'll put some temporary stuff outside, it's all for the contractor when we get that. Right now, we went out to, on proposals, and Weston Sampson ended up having the best proposal and the best qualifications, and we hired them to do the preliminary design and then the go through.
So they have
designs.
some kind of a cutover,
Yep.
external system to use
Yep.
for a while?
Probably, and we got a little room outside there.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
That isn't in
These
the-
aren't designed every day, too, so.
No.
That wasn't in the ESCO plan, was it? In any kind of way, if it's gonna be such an energy saver?
We really didn't do the ESCO plan on the
It
water.
was, yeah.
We did our own kind of ESCO, but it was
That's
all
right.
to HVAC and the roofing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so mostly everything else there has been changed over. All the
Right.
variable speed drive, very frequency drives have, dated myself, very frequency drives have all been changed over, and lighting and everything else. You know, this is the last really big.
So, just on the technology side, so I understand the electricity we use to generate ozone? You have ozone generators or something?
Yes. Yeah, it's an ozone generator and then the.
Oh.
High voltage,
Yeah, so this is general
Yeah, I
fund.
have pictures.
So the
glow in the
ozone.
dark kind of stuff, right?
Now,
It's
and I
still
think
being
it's important to
generated.
note, like, when we look on page 127 and
Yeah.
the water and sewer, that they're different than the general fund capital projects, because really
Self-supporting.
they're self-supported.
Right.
So the fees that get paid for water and sewer go back in and fund, and that's where we come up with the retained earnings, and we, sometimes we have other, direct expenditures out of the capital plan to help out where needed.
In the first item, which is the ozone system, this year, we're looking for the design
Mm.
money, and then the next year we'll be back, we'll refine the number and come back with it. We feel, and based on what Weston Sampson put together for us, in the preliminary design, we're in much better shape on the numbers and what we can do. So that's why we kind of collapsed everything into tier 3 from other requests, and pushed some things off that I felt weren't as important as this, so that we.
So reprioritization. So real quick, Bruce, we're gonna, I guess maybe Lynn, are we gonna bond the 2.2 million then? In 18 or?
Other than 800,000 that I'm projecting that
That's
we'll
in
be able
the
to use for retained
retained
earnings.
So the rest will be bonded then?
Right, unless next year.
We have more retained
We have more
earnings.
retained earnings and we can use more against that, yep. And by that time, Bruce might have some of his other projects that he's been working on in the water department that might have excess bond proceeds that
Yeah,
he
right.
didn't use up that would be
And when
able
the
to
bill came in, it
get
was
by
not
against
so
that as
bad.
well.
Right, once we bid it, and, yeah, but.
Good.
And then the next one is the chemical feed tank, again, same situation. We have a lot of chemicals that we use up there, and we're redoing the tanks, we've done a couple already. This one, a little bit more, and we changed it around because we're finding that the chemical feeds, it's not just the tanks, and the chemical feeds are getting pretty corroded and pretty messy, so. We're gonna do the fluoride in 2 steps, we're gonna put the tank in 1 year, and then do the chemical feed, redo the next year, and go in another tank. So again, that's the plan to redo the tanks, looking at which ones are in the oldest and the worst shape, and redoing them. And then the last one, we moved that one up and moved the interconnects back. And the interconnects, just so people understand that would be if we were going to get water from another town, which is very difficult, because everybody's on a different gradient. Can't support, we couldn't support a whole nother town. We might be able to help out, so you'd have to do multiple, and that, to me now, after looking at this and being here for years, that's gonna need to take a regional approach, and, through either Merrimack Valley Planning or something, and, you have multiple gradients, you have multiple use it where the water comes from, and so you gotta, there's a lot of, and of course, everybody has their own water engineer, so, you know, everybody, it's all in,
So right now,
push that
we
off.
had a backup to Haverhill, is that what it is?
No, we don't have any connect, we could, if we needed to, in either one, we could lay some pipe pretty quickly or above ground and get into both of them, but this is to make, you know, permanent interconnection. The only one that, tell you this interesting story about that, with Andover is the only one that we ever had one, and that was only for partial parts of the system. And we had a pump that would pump out of pump Andover's water into ours.
Right.
It was built back in the 70s, I think, redone in the 90s. It needed to be redone again because we never used it, it just went into rust. It's below ground. It's over on Peter Street, on land that I don't own, owned by them, that we don't own, I mean, Merrimack College. And so that was all that issue. So there was all kinds of things going on. And then I found out, when talking to my counterparts over, and we went and sat down with them, they've improved their system. Now we would have to pump into their system. So you can see where it starts to get,
Yeah.
and it needs to have more of a regional approach and look at those things. So that's why we kind of push those things on.
And we're not the only time, I know North Reading's having all kinds of issues.
Yeah, they
They're
get-
looking to connect to MWRA now, you know?
Yeah, because they're looking for more, and they can only get so much from the inlet.
Yeah.
Right, so, and the reason why we pushed the valve, and we're seeing that this, last year we had, in the last 2 years, we've had 2 big valve failures. One of them wasn't that old. Again, the top of the bolts on the top of the valves coming out, so we're exercising those valves now, and we have some money in here to replace some of them. We already replaced and added a valve out on Sound Street.
Mhm.
So that we can shut down a smaller area if we did have a problem. That's why, so, saw the need for that firsthand last year.
Mhm.
So Lynn, maybe a financial technical question, but general obligation versus enterprise fund specific bonding. I
What was
see
that
this.
say?
I see there's 2 types of flavors of bonds
Yep,
associated.
general
General op
ob-
basically says if this enterprise funds can't handle it, the rest of the town will handle it.
Right,
That's normal, that's common, that's.
it is normal, yep. But
Why the difference?
we typically, I mean, we won't, general obligation bonds are, you can get them in the water and sewer enterprise funds as well.
You can what?
And the general obligation
Mhm.
bonds can be issued for the enterprise
For
funds
the-
as
Yes,
well.
yeah.
And they'll pay for them themselves. We don't, the town typically will not issue a bond that the enterprise funds can't pay for. We won't pick up that.
What's the difference between, is that a rates difference, or interest rate difference?
Yeah, I was gonna ask what the market is on that.
On the general
The difference
obligation?
between a general obligation bond and a revenue bond, basically.
Oh, a revenue bond, we
No,
don't
this
use
is a
revenue
revenue
bonds.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
Enterprise.
enterprise
Type bond.
type bond.
There's really no difference, they get the same interest rates.
So
Because it's
there's
the
no-
town.
there's no
really
market treatment
difference.
at all?
No, the difference is that if the obligation is that the enterprise funds have to support it
Right.
versus the general fund. And when we do the borrowing and we do it's called the OS statement to the bond rating agencies, we have to give specific information on the enterprise funds to show that we can support the bonds that we're asking for those.
Okay.
They won't
Okay.
issue them if we can't.
Okay, so
Right.
let's say for some reason you issue them and the enterprise fails, what happens then with that
Well,
bond?
the only way it would fail is if we never collected water and sewer rates.
Okay.
Someone turned off the
And we'd have
water.
to stop that.
Well, I
right.
know, but this is
So,
just
I
a
mean, right, hypothetical?
Yeah, what happens to the
Then
bondholders
we
in
default
that
on
case?
the bonds and then we'd pick it up in the general fund.
Okay, so that,
We would,
it
as a
is,
town.
it is a backup by the
Yes.
general
No
obligations of
different
the
than
town, right?
when
Okay.
the enterprise, the Stevens estate,
Mhm.
when they couldn't,
Yeah.
they
Right.
ended the years with the deficits. And the general fund had to supplant the money in there
Mhm.
to bring it up to a positive level that we never got back. So, yeah, there would be no different. We would have to pay it.
We'd
no
have to
matter
pay
what.
one way or another, okay.
Because the
so-
town as a whole
due.
is responsible for it.
We should, okay, all right.
What's that?
I'm past that.
That's right.
Okay.
No, no.
Actually 5, right? Next year. Is that just a typo?
Probably.
Okay, because
Yeah, it's a 5-year borrowing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's just that when you put the numerical one, but then it,
Yeah.
and I'm like, what? Yeah, and I don't know why I was looking so carefully at those, because this
No, no,
stuff,
no.
I have to admit, this stuff really kind of confuses me. I'm
Yeah,
like,
it's
oh,
okay.
okay, I see, they break it out by rate, by, and then I'm looking, oh, wait a minute, 10-year, 5-year. Okay.
Yeah.
So on-
I don't know
yeah,
why
it's on
that's
page
okay.
4
You know
and
what it
5.
is, it's, probably cutting and pasting.
Yeah, that's when you
Bruce?
create
Oh,
it.
it's probably.
The old water pump station there, did that finally get demoed?
No, I was just looking over some of the things, and I'll
Yeah,
give you a
from
little
previous
update.
year, yeah.
We're gonna do that this spring.
Okay, that's not still in the budget for this, yeah, okay.
Yeah, we had a lot of changes going on in the treatment plan, and we didn't, the superintendent retired, and the superintendent, his daughter died.
So it's still gonna be an
A lot of things
FY16
going on up there.
anyway.
So we got a lot done, but it's a couple of things that we didn't get done yet.
Okay.
Yeah, we,
Just looking
started the
back,
we've already started some of the corrosion study from last year, and we did one of the chemical feed tanks, we're working on that, and course seals. So those are the things from last year that we had, in the process control
Yeah.
computer. So we're working on all those. We should have most of them. I think the pump station should be done in the spring. And we have to figure out what we do with it.
Although, so 4 or 5 years out, you get this big kahuna, 1.4 million for, so it's the backwash tank extension?
Yeah, there were some things in here that we were looking at with the baffles and the backwash tank. We can increase the capacity of that water treatment plant without redoing increasing much there by doing a couple of things with the tanks and putting some baffles in and increasing the contact time through the plant. And that's what those are, if we should ever need to increase, right now, water demand's holding pretty steady, we can keep
Okay.
up with it. So that's why those were in there, and that's why I pushed those back. They were kind of more upfront. The ozone to me is much more important, obviously, because that's what we need to fix right too.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's what those were there.
Okay, thanks, Bruce.
Yep. Any other questions for me? Anything?
When we have a new development in town, typically for the sewer system, a couple new houses get built in a lot. Is there typically a requirement that you build a sewer system into that development, or does that depend on a development?
No, there was a master plan that we did called a wastewater management plan, comprehensive wastewater management plan that we did about 8 years ago now, 7 years ago. I took it over when I came here, and it identified areas to expand our sewer system. And there were a number of areas outlying, and then I don't know if you see that. I always told the story about the donuts. There's a couple of areas that are with the sewer all around it for various reasons, either the town and over the years sewered up to those areas and then developed the sewer beyond it. And those two areas, Bannon Drive is one I'm thinking of. Some of the things off of Ray Street, and those type areas. And it was decided, and the selectmen at that time put a policy in that was 100% betterment, which means that if it goes by your house, and by state law, you'd have to pay, over 20 years, you'd have to pay the betterment, and then pay for connecting in. So it's the two things, you have to pay for the sewer going by. And decisions were made, we went to public meetings on that, decisions were made by most of the people that it was almost equal to put in and redo their septic system, so they decided to stay with that. And so that kind of went away. Those are in a plan if we wanted to do that. Now, if somebody develops a new area, and there hasn't been really major development, it's starting to come up now, if they wanted to tie into us, the developer would then have to build that sewer and build a pump station to meet our sewer system, if they had, or whatever, the collector sewer, or whatever. And so it would be on the developer, and then we would, a good example of this isn't sewer, but it's water, where we, can't think of the development right across next to where the National Grid is, that development.
Berry Street. Berry Street?
No, this is
Old
down-
Salem Village?
Oh, that
down-
one they just finished?
Yeah.
Houses, I think it's a bunch of houses, isn't it?
Yeah, it's right off at Chestnut Street, right in that area. It's on the other side. And, what was it? Orchard Village, thank you.
Yeah.
That's it, Orchard Village. and where they had to build the water pump station. To our specifications, we had our water engineers look at that, and then they turned it over to us. So those are the type of things that would happen, and the same thing would happen in sewer. In fact, because of that, and because of what Sutton Street, we were able to run a water pumping station on Rosemont, which was antiquated. Instead of rebuilding it, we put in a new water line and connected it to the Sutton Hill and the other one, so now we don't need a pump station. It's always great to do that, all costs there. That's what usually happens. Like, for instance, the Riding Academy is not doing, they're going into existing up there, but they did an evaluation of all the pump stations before, make sure that they were able to go in.
See, I live off of there, and when they put the gravity line down to Salem Street, they didn't come close to my house. I'm on septic.
Yeah, where are you?
I still am, because.
No, where?
I'm on Campbell Road,
Oh, yeah.
by the.
Yeah, but there's a pump station.
Yeah,
But
but
they
They
stopped
didn't go
short.
far
Yeah.
enough.
they didn't go, the gravity line didn't come far enough my way.
Right,
Right.
right. Yeah, we're about, I think we're somewhere around 70% water and around 55, 60 sewer.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe. You some town, percentage-wise.
You don't
Right at
do
the end of our
Stevens
street,
Street.
the second
Yeah.
No.
end of the
Nope.
street.
No,
There's a big cement.
that'll be, Eric.
They've got retained earnings,
They do.
though. Wow.
Yes, they've been doing very well up there. Yes.
Stevens?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the next page over, 155.
It's all over the news.
So,
Well, they said what,
Very
Stevens in the
excited.
red?
Hmm?
Stevens Estate's in the red.
Yeah.
No.
That's that's what the word were.
No.
I know it's in the black.
Retained earnings.
I know, but it's right, Stevens Estate is in the black.
Growing like,
do we have any more questions from Bruce before we let him head back?
He's not gonna
Made it
get
easy.
If he even shows up. Andrew.
He's actually come from where I'm going.
Oh, where you going to?
Here he is.
Home.
Oh, yes.
There he is. Hey. What a segue, what a segue.
He's waiting in the waiting there.
I waited outside when Bruce was done. Heard it all.
Yeah, and more.
Yeah.
Good.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks
a lot,
Bruce.
Safe trip.
Is everything good there? The roads are
You were
good?
this time.
Thanks.
Happy New Year, everybody.
You took
Yes, yeah.
It is very long.
longer.
Yeah.
I think they set it up for when they were doing, they added more to it when they were doing training. I think it is longer. To be honest with you, so you have to.
Louder,
Yeah.
yeah.
If we want to take a second, if anyone needs a quick bio break, we can do it.
or chocolate.
That's about the last thing that I need after the holidays. All right.
Is your Christmas tree down? It's all set down?
My Christmas tree is down. On the
Well,
curb.
I guess you do close it.
How many ornaments
up?
Saturday,
Well, then I think
this
you
is
can have
done
one.
everything else yesterday. Christmas is officially over. Lot.
Today's the
She said the
special.
key to the storage space is out back on the pantry door, so.
Good feeling when it's.
Did they ever do the Little Christmas in Lawrence for the Three Kings? Do they do that in Lawrence? But there's, I want to say there's something called like Little Christmas.
Yeah, okay, we did that.
I know some Italian,
Just worried.
some,
I was like, oh, that looked nice.
Yeah. They do.
Just a suggestion.
Just a good example.
Yeah.
Now you do.
Versus like one for the
Two boys that go.
Let's be practical on that. Right, and that's why I'm asking now, because I'll get the notification on the 25th and the 26th. the check will
General
be,
fund.
they're testified tomorrow afternoon, and then they'll be handed out on Thursday.
But we definitely have to keep our tree.
You're not gonna miss the date of when the check came out.
Right.
Oh.
What I'm asking is, like, maybe.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, oh, I know, oh my God.
I know.
One person in the family.
Oh, they are.
They
Because we
all
always
get
get the check, we always get the money in our accounts on Wednesday.
So it's more than you're gonna do that. I don't have the check, so they might say, whatever.
They're saying 10,000 is gonna come out of the operating budget.
Oh, so
They're not gonna follow.
It's cheating, but
Stage one is like the actual economics.
Yeah.
Okay. Everything was 50 to 70% on time. It was all decorated.
No, it's okay.
Tell me it's a pitch roof, but it's a.
No, it's a flat roof, I think, isn't it?
This is a flat roof.
Yeah, no, I know.
What did he say?
It's like, so we're taller than we are.
Well,
It looks like it's way over
Yeah, this is-
very nice.
Might as well.
All right, I think we're
let's roll.
ready, Andrew. Thank you for coming back this way.
No problem, it's always a
So
pleasure.
late.
So I had a few meetings with Marblehead, so I drove to Marblehead and came back, and Bruce was going home to Marblehead.
Oh, dear.
So I told him the traffic wasn't bad. Well, just a brief overview, if it helps, obviously, the focus on the capital plan for the last several years is to try to make it, I don't know if routine is the right word, but consistent with the previous year, that what we had found as an experience beginning 4 years ago was that over the previous 10 years, the 5-year capital plan was 1 year of reality and 4 years of less solid information, and we just feel from a capital perspective, a little different than financial planning, from a capital perspective, we should have a better handle on what's happening with our physical assets. We should know more about what's happening with those and be able to plan more appropriately for their replacements. Obviously, there's been some changes that clearly predate me in terms of facilities and those kinds of things, which help that conversation. We have more information, more data than we've had, historically speaking, to make decisions with. I think you see that a little bit in some of the requests being made. So we try to be, what we say to the departments at the beginning of the process, and Lynn can attest to this, is you really have to come to us with a justification for why what you're proposing in 17 looks any different than when you told us 17 was going to look like in 16. And even that, the same with 18, 19, and 20, and 21. 21's a new year, so again, some of the data is new. So we have some changes year to year. That does happen. I'm not saying it's a sort of foolproof process, but we really challenge the departments to think beyond the immediate. And again, from a budgetary perspective, that's a little more difficult, but from a capital planning perspective, it shouldn't be. And I think this plan honors that. We've also had, I think we've repeated ad nauseum our interest in keeping debt service at or below 5%. We've had some success with that. The numbers push those limits, but again, there's a decision made in the last 2 years that both the ESCO, I'm missing one, that the ESCO, but there was another one. So we're staying in the 5%, incorporating paying for the ESCO.
And not, we don't have any of the utility savings associated with it.
Yeah, there's another piece associated with that, but you're right. So
this is ESCO debt, but no savings.
correct. So we're bearing the debt on the CIP side,
Mhm.
honoring the 5%, but leaving the savings in the departments.
The difference between, Robert, for fiscal year 18,
Sure.
we bump up against that 5% ceiling, we get
Yes.
to like about 5.3%. And
Oh,
I'm
three.
just trying to, to figure out this part a little bit. There's a purple stack on top of FY 18. And my question is that due to the bond in DPW?
What page are you on?
Page 7.
Page 7.
This thing, is this due to the the bonding of the DPW deck and expenses?
Well, it's the bonding of all of the capital from the
Oh,
previous
right.
year.
Well, all of the capital from the previous year, but there's a bump up in the DPW garage, isn't there?
Well, the facility master plan dollars, you mean?
Yeah.
It's DPW, it's the construction of the DPW facility and the design of the classrooms.
Yeah, they seem to have gone up a little.
Yeah, so we had, one of the things, we talked about this a little bit last year. So the facility master plan was completed in draft form in fiscal 2010
Okay.
with no assumption for escalation. We knew that going in. The final version released at town meeting and finance committee and addressed and delivered at town meeting honored the 2010 numbers, again with no escalation. And our commitment was we were gonna find a way for as long as we can to hold our hand against that total, about $25 million. And what we found, we first talked to the finance committee a little bit about last year, was the construction escalation starting to catch up. So we are seeing that to a certain extent, and we're seeing that a little bit in the DPW facility. Town Hall's project is pretty much dead on. The fire station was several $100,000 under.
Mm-hmm.
School administration was about $5 under, but under
We
nonetheless.
got used to- we got
Couple
used to
bucks.
those.
Yeah.
Now this has gone up a
Yep.
little, so we're not used to that.
We are seeing some construction escalation. I mean, I think the market is seeing more than we're seeing, quite frankly. We had 13 general contractor responses to the town hall project. That's unheard of. Typically, if we get 5 or 6. 13 would be an environment where things are tanking and everybody's bidding for business. And so the bids on that were good, right on. But we're expecting that we're gonna see increased cost due to escalation. We're seeing that, I think, across the energy markets anyway. So we're incorporating that into this plan.
Into the plan, and so it looked like the public works, it's up
Yep.
about 331.
I think I would have said 330 and change, yes.
And then you bumped up the senior center also.
Yeah, so now we're adding some escalation down the trail to make the assumption that costs on all of these projects will.
We're gonna, yeah, because it's 2010 and it's time that we stop fooling ourselves. Yeah, unnecessarily. Mhm.
So the first 4 projects, even though first estimated, professionally estimated in 2010, would be the 4th project, which is Town Hall, which was delivered in 2016, held the original numbers.
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
Really good.
So, but we're feeling that across a number of, the good news about a good economy, the bad news of a good economy
Mhm.
is some escalated costs in some sectors. And so we're feeling that to a certain extent. Overall, not so bad.
Andrew, I see the facilities maintenance has gone up.
Yeah, so Steve will
70
come,
something.
yes, so I think this is a good news story. The good news story is, you may have been, Don may have been one of those folks, but I think Don's been around long enough to hear how come we aren't spending more in facilities? And the
Right.
answer has been, 4 years ago, if you gave us $5, we didn't know where to spend it. And until we knew where to spend it and spend it in an area that made sense, in terms of the investment in our infrastructure, did make a lot of sense. So our first sort of pass at that was $150,000. Steve will come and present a very detailed by line item where we expect the 225. It's a recognition of the fact that we have a better understanding of our building. Steve's done an assessment of each of the buildings. It's a printed assessment, it's posted online. It gives you a general idea of what's going on in our buildings, the age of most of the physical plant, roof, exterior, those windows, those kinds of.
Majority being schools.
Yeah, vast majority by square footage being schools.
Schools, yeah.
So we see the additional $75,000 recognizes the ability now to fund on a pay-as-you-go basis certain things that we really did on a very reactionary basis. One of those being, last year in the 150 was a component to start the funding of replacing the library roof. So we've done a full assessment of the library roof. Some of that will be picked up by CPA funds because of the tile historic roof. What we're finding, so we hired an independent consultant to do an evaluation of that roof. We're finding the install done 20 years ago was not done appropriately. We didn't have anybody supervising those kinds of projects at the time, so we're finding the metal clasps were not installed properly, and instead of a 50 or 60-year roof, we may want to start incrementally replacing that. The question is, can we salvage the tiles, and how do we salvage the tiles, and that kind of stuff. So we're getting better, not quite where we want to be, but better at understanding our assets, about 1 million square feet in assets, so that we can start planning for in the building maintenance line items, those items that are mid-size for replacement. So in there a little bit is some higher-end HVAC work in the youth center in the out years, because we're seeing that, and so we're better on the HVAC side, better on the roofing side. And we're getting, and so that's why you'll see that go up. But Steve will provide you with, I don't have it with me, otherwise I'd give it to you, a list of what's spent out of the 225. What we ask for by putting the line item in that category, though, is if we get mid-year and all of a sudden we get a $50,000 issue because you have 1 million square feet of assets, it's nice to think it's predictable, but it isn't always predictable. It gives Steve the flexibility to address that problem. We had a boiler issue. We had with 3 boilers in town hall, we had a catastrophic failure of all 3 boilers simultaneously. The boilers weren't replaced.
During the
One was,
remodeling?
I think one, I forget exactly what the deal was. And so,
You tried to tie it in here, one of them.
try to what?
Did you try to take care of a boiler problem by tying it in here at town hall?
Well, this is, we're in the police station.
Oh, no, oh, I'm sorry.
You got me confused.
Wrong,
So-
wrong way to
Yeah, Flex hose works, but not. I was a little confused. So we had to address,
I'll go back to sleep.
We Band-Aid a few together, incorporated some of those changes as a function of what's happening in terms of the town hall major project, brought up wanting up, going. So those kind of things happen during the year, and these kinds of dollars help. So Steve typically has a pay-as-you-go item within his operational budget, which you'll typically see, not uncommon number, 50?
60 to 60.
50 to 60 on an operational line item. So we spread out the facility stuff to give us the different views of how to do it financially.
So we just, whatever we figured we needed for 16 or 17 and needed more money, so we'll just pro forma it out based on
Yep.
that.
Yep, and part of that again is, we're waiting to hear from the CPC how much of the roof of the library. We've got about a 5-year plan to replace that roof. It doesn't make sense to replace it all at once.
Yeah.
Our original plan was only the flat roof. The rubberized roof looked like it was the immediate. And we had to address some life safety, some tiles falling off. We need to secure those immediately because obviously got some liability questions. So there's some other items within that plan, but you'll see an item.
The playground improvements, more CPC?
Yeah, no, playground improvements that are a combination. If you remember, 2 years ago, there was funding by the CPA for the Sergeant School Playground. That led to a discussion that we should sort of model that rolling forward for the rest of the playground. So we used our open space plan to identify the 11 playgrounds that we have in the community, some on school space, some on just town land. And we worked with a consultant, very short money, $2,000, who specializes in playground evaluation. Anybody specializes, almost everyone. And we worked with that person to create a ranking system to rank all of the playgrounds, leaving Sergeant off because it had been funded. And when that plan was done, we then met with a member of the school committee, with Stan Limpert, and a member of all the PTOs. And we rolled out the plan to them, and then our recreation folks as well, and came to a consensus for a 7-year plan to replace, maybe slightly longer than that, might be 8 or 9, plan to systematically upgrade of all of our playgrounds in the same model as we use for the facilities master plan. And in that agreement came 3 components: CPC funding of $100,000 a year toward the playgrounds, the rest to be subsidized by the individual PTOs, the sole exception being the playgrounds which were not school associated, and those would get $100,000. The exception to that being Drummond, which is our most used playground and our most sophisticated playground in terms of the nature of play structure. There was consensus we would commit $200,000 to that playground, $100,000 everything else. And then to make sure that we didn't roll back into this problem some years from now, we put $50,000 into the capital plan to do a systematic replacement so as pieces fail, swing sets fail, slides fail. So this is not unlike the building maintenance category. It allows us a regular commitment to our playgrounds. And then in Bruce's DPW operating budget, another $25,000 to deal with things like replacing the surface material. So the cork material or the perimeter boundaries around these play structures. So more operational items that shouldn't be capitalized. So we took a 3-pronged approach and said, listen, we're gonna make a commitment to all of our playgrounds. in addition to the larger capital investments like McAvoy. And we're gonna replicate what we did on the facilities plan to the playground plan. We're in year 3 of that. Franklin got its funding last year. I believe we're on, Kittredge this year. I believe after that, you'll be at Drummond, and I can't give it up. Can't remember.
That's great.
Yeah,
It's great fun.
Yeah.
Other, CPC's rolling along though, so again, other than the inflation, we're sort of on schedule. Town hall, we're in the process of moving out of town hall, as you folks know, you're living through that as well.
Yeah, someone here complained about having to pack up all their stuff.
They-
Not being able to get the minutes to us in time.
Lynn's multitasking, I was whining today, so it's fine, it's all good. Yeah, the move will be interesting. It'll be, actually, what's really neat is, for the first time in the history of the community, all of the non-public works, public safety departments will be in the same area. It is so difficult to manage the operations staff sitting 3 miles away. It seems like it's not difficult with the phone, we have technology, but there's nothing better than being able to get up off your desk and go interact with folks and say what's going on, what's happening, what are those issues that you're facing. And the opportunity to move in with them, to live as they've lived, as nomads to a certain extent for a period of time would be a good thing, and then bringing them all back and coming back to town hall with us into town hall would be really positive. We have some clarity on the technology side. I know the technology's been out there for a bit of time, and with the new superintendent, an opportunity. Mike Grant is the IT director on the school side, the IT director on the town side, Chris McClure, you'll see through the budget process, again, both fairly new folks in the North Andover realm of things. Mike Grant was in an administrative role in the school department before taking that role under Kevin Hutchinson. Chris McClure has, in a very positive way, shaken up everything we're doing. He's an extremely experienced, Lynn can speak to it, I think all the staff can, extremely experienced IT professional who comes with both private sector and municipal experience, having spent time in Westford and Hopkinton. Specializes in some of the public safety. He actually was part of the team at the beginning of the marathon, working with the state police and Homeland Security and others on issues, associated with making sure that the runners are protected. And he's helping us with the transition to Munis. He has a lot of experience with Munis. We're transitioning to a few other, we're doing a number of other things in that front. So too many to mention in this venue.
Do you think he can get my Dropbox one?
He's not a miracle worker. And we're going all Google Apps, so we're gonna get you over to Google Drive soon, so that's all about to change. So one of the clarities that's really helped with Mike Grant, we've had a couple of meetings between the superintendent and myself, and Mike Grant and Chris McClure, and sat down and said, okay, we've got these various buckets, for lack of a better word. How do we make sure we're delivering what the expectation is on IT? I think some of us, I came in sort of after some of those changes, but certainly people have filled me in on how things were in the past. So what's clear from this plan is there is a single dedicated line item for school technology, and that is school technology. It'll largely be instructional technology. There are cases where the infrastructure in the classroom need to be upgraded. The problem with the term network technologies, it's about this wide. What do we mean by the network? Is it in the closet? It is in the wall? So we're redefining our own terminology to make sure we're saying the same things. But that $100,000 is committed to be used by the school department. They determine its use, they determine the priorities of those dollars, and those are invested toward largely instructional technology or enhancements in the network as it affects instructional technology. The town's technology component in this particular case is, again, largely our replacement in those network items which affect how we operate. So those are dedicated for those particular purposes. Those haven't changed. Those have been set at $50,000 and $100,000 respectively. You see laid out in the process, we invested heavily in a voice over IP phone system. It runs through, it's here, it's in every school building, it's every municipal building. And we recognize the need that was a major investment, several $100,000 investment. And so we're gonna need to begin to replace things like handsets and make sure that that technology upgrades. So you see that way out in year 5 as we're starting to contemplate that.
Andrew, one question on, you're talking about kind of the schools, kind of bandwidth and so forth there. I don't know quite how big it is, but there's a shift in the state moving from the MCAS to the PARC test. I don't know if you're familiar with that at all, that piece.
Question is good, yes.
All right, and of course, PARC requires basically a lot of technology. Is that in the discussion for how to deal with that if that gets dropped on us?
Yeah, that's, the superintendent is certainly aware of that. I think the questions become from district to district, you know, the sort of one-to-one component to student from a testing perspective. There are communities dealing that with mobile labs that roll up and come up with the facility to do that. Certainly the superintendent is aware of that. It's factored into these kinds of decisions in terms of where they need to focus their technology. So built into that are these kinds of discussions. We have plenty of bandwidth. We have, I think as Matt Killen used to say, plenty of room in the pipe. We plenty of capacity at this point.
It's the machine part now that's.
Well, it's a question of, right, well, how do you implement the test? Is it is truly one-to-one? Do you do this in sort of a scheduling event? But that's factored into how the superintendent will deal with that in terms of this. That's why we're dedicating dollars. What has been confusing, even though we've had the slide item, is the question of where should it be directed?
Yeah.
And the superintendent is focused on directing these dollars in a way that addresses that issue amongst others.
Right.
I don't want to speak for her, but I think she believes there needs to be more instructional technology in the classroom. We're focusing on that. Through the budget, we're addressing a little bit of the curriculum, which will have, funding curriculum, which will have a little bit of an impact on the technology as well.
Sure, so, like, in another, that kind of another way of saying, like, I deal with this all the time, is you're basically saying, like, it's kind of the town's job to get the connectivity out to the schools and take care of the server closets in the schools where the pipes come, the connectivity is coming in and then going out. And so you're actually pushing a little bit further. So the town kind of network responsibility is being a little bit, viewed a little bit more expansively than, and you're trying to have the school dollars more focus on what the students and teachers will be using? Is that a fair way to look at it?
Yes, it's a great way to look at it. I think we always felt that way. What happens to a certain extent with a little bit of the transition, so transition in some of the IT people, a transition in some of the leadership positions, is that I can tell you that's where we thought we were, say 2 or 3 years ago, but it wasn't where we were. So folks like me use terms and how that's communicated. We think that term means something, and then it's received by technology folks or and so what's been made really clear, even in the form of committing it to writing, not contractually, but saying, okay, here's your role, here's your role. We view technology in really in a sort of a 3-component fact. We have the IT director for the town who has a responsibility to make sure the town or municipal departments do what they do, whatever that is, okay? We got a school IT director that's responsible for the schools through the superintendent to get what they need and do what they need to do. And then we have what Chris Hall used to refer to as the 5th utility. We have technology, right? We have this fiber backbone that connects all of our building. We have phone systems. We have hardware and software in that system. And it is the municipal side that's responsible for that. And we look at that as a service responsibility. Our job is to make sure that when someone's sitting in a classroom and they plug that into the wall, that it works.
It's a facility.
So we see ourselves operating, so the municipal IT director is not only the sort of, is everything okay in the fire station, but also sees themselves as a service provider to the schools and making sure what's in the closet is working. Now, there are sometimes what's in the closet, this way you get into the term network and it's overused, so we're being educated, the superintendent and I, and using slightly different words to make sure that we don't use network all the time. But there are times that what's in that closet is perfectly functional, does everything we want it to do, but it may not meet the needs, the educational technology needs of what's necessary in the classroom. And so sometimes these kind of dollars may need, a portion of these dollars may be invested in an enhancement and what may be part of the network if it really is to add value to the classroom. There's a little bit of a subtlety in between there, but the town or municipal side is handling the service relationship with the schools. And when we're not performing their job is to call us and say, what's going on with that, switch? Why aren't we upgrading that? What's been confusing is sometimes they were paying for switches and routers, sometimes we were paying for them. That relationship, I think, we've done a really effective job in the last 2 months of really being crystal clear about that, focusing that more on the instructional technology and issues like park testing.
We saw this years ago in the networking industry and colleges, higher education, where they had academic and admin computing.
Yeah.
And then they're like, who's responsible for that wire, and it's like, well, you're responsible to get it to the wall.
Right.
Please share your glossary with us when
So yeah, so I have to, they did give me some new terms, I have to go back and look at those terms, because I'll forget them again. So I think there's some clarity there, so we're starting to focus on, so on the operational side, as an example, one of the things that you'll see on the operational side is where we have capacity, meaning bandwidth, communication capacity, what Chris has identified is we're lacking in storage capacity, or he doesn't feel like we're dealing with storage capacity. So although we're moving more to the cloud, which will relieve some of that requirement, our sort of hard storage capacity is not ideal, it's not flexible enough. So in the operational budget, you'll see the 60,000 that typically is in the shared services, IT, capital line item, you'll see requested that number go to 100,000. And for the next 2 years, that 100 is being invested in blade storage and hard storage, locally driven hard storage, in addition to moving some of our storage to the cloud. And then he expects that that's going to be an every 5-year cycle, that you run through that. So we are, and I say we, because it really is, it's not only Lynn and the DPW people and the facilities people and the technology people, they're starting to think about life cycles, and they're starting to think about regular replacement. So we're, which is what I like in terms of the requests I receive from departments, is they're not just thinking about today, they really are thinking about life cycle replacement. Which is great. So Bruce, I'm sure, gave you all the detail of the roadway plan, right?
Right.
Which is,
Yep, we're doing the same sidewalks as last year.
Yep.
Over and over again.
Well, when I reproduce.
Bruce hates sidewalks. I shouldn't say that, Bruce.
No, when I reproduced the book,
It's a big draw.
I
Oh, could you say
printed, well, I printed the one from last year instead of the one
That's what
We
we
could do that every year, that'd be great. Make sure, it's easy to accomplish.
paid.
It's done. Check that
Make sure we meet that milestone very
Thomas
easily.
found
Let's just
Yeah.
follow a bit to see if we actually read that
That's
stuff.
right. It's like a Where's Waldo sort of thing, right?
That's right.
I gotta throw one, we gotta
Bury
throw
one in a
something
late
there
page,
once in a
one of
while.
those stamps.
That's
Like a hidden Mickey if you go to this.
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious with the increase on the DPW
High
master
school.
facilities plan. That's the most sizable increase over last year's.
Yeah,
So what's that all about, I guess?
it's just about it's about inflation, it's about the fact that, there's two things going on now.
That's a huge.
One is, well, no, but that was priced out in 2010. So if you take 3 or 4 or 5%,
Right.
and you annualize that
That's
over
true.
5 years, or 15%. So all of a sudden, we're talking about $300,000 increase on $4 million. So we're absorbing some of that ourselves, so the savings coming back off the fire station. We're absorbing a portion of what could be true inflation on that. I would say too that it's probably a little bit of we haven't done the estimate on that project yet, that's ongoing. We've hired the OPM and now hired the architect on that. It's a building which probably could use a lot more money, but it's also a building that isn't like a traditional bricks and mortar building. It's a metal shed building. And so, we could always use more, but there's also that tipping point that you don't overinvest in metal shed buildings because they're metal shed buildings. So, we feel like if for some reason the bids are remarkably favorable, there are structural elements there which would just increase the scope. And so it's a little bit different where some of these other scopes are clear, right? You know, you're building an administration building, you know you had so many square foot. In this case, that building will not look like the fire station when it reopens. It's gonna look like an improved metal shed building. That's what it's gonna look like. It's likely gonna look like, could very well be, we're still waiting for the consultants' reports back on it, so could very well be, a modular addition to the front to deal with the administrative piece.
Oh,
As a solution to deal, because the administrative side of the facility is not the best environment from a workplace perspective.
Anybody that's visited the
Have you
facility.
ever been in there?
Agree.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Not, from an accessibility point of view, forget, and then just from, people from a workspace and an expectation of a professional environment, and it just doesn't meet those standards. So it's possible that will look like like an early learning center type facility where we move the administrative into the front end
Mhm.
and sort of use that space that exists as the administrative end today really as just extra space. And then we've got some structural elements that we've had to, on an interim basis over the last 4 years, spend some money on to make sure the structural elements hold up. The roof will probably need to be replaced. If there truly is extra dollars, we may look to changing the salt shed, which is, not ideal. So there's a number of factors there, but we're also limited by the fact that once we reach a certain point of construction, we've got to engage the conservation folks again, because that's sitting in the middle of a wetland.
Right.
And
Got
so-
some buffer zone issues
Yeah, it's like we're in them.
there. Yeah. My point.
Yeah. So nothing like a lot of vehicles with a lot of engine oil and
Yeah.
diesel fuel and a fuel tank, and it probably today we wouldn't put it there.
Right.
Yeah.
How much do we want to invest at that point?
Yeah, and so we're limiting the scope to be, what we say in most cases, to all of the general contractors or to the architects. And this is how we got by with the first 4 projects. This is what we have. So you need to build what we can afford. This is similar. And we're gonna do what I wouldn't wanna go more than 4-ish million on this building. But if we had to be located somewhere else and did soup to nuts, it's a $30 million building.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Oh,
We're not
yeah.
doing that.
By today's specs, it would.
Yeah, yeah, it wouldn't be located there, it'd be further out somewhere, out country down 114.
Yeah.
You'd have a metal shed building separate from the
Hey,
administrative.
we get enough stuff down 114.
Hey.
Sorry, but that's probably where it'd be located. Gonna be good land? No.
Yeah, there.
Big commercial area.
I mentioned the appropriate commercial zone.
So what's the vision, Andrew, is gonna be, the front would be where you pay your bills or order your water meter stuff, and then stuff behind would be engineering and then maintenance, right?
I think it'd take all the engineering stuff, all the administrative pieces, and again, we
Yeah.
just bringing engineering.
It's
on
pretty
board.
crowded in there right now.
Yeah, I think we'd build enough square footage to handle all the administrative, which would be your operations folks, your director,
Yeah.
your engineer,
All right.
your GIS staff, bring all the administrative folks out of the building, and leave the building really as an operational hub for your equipment, which can be fine. We have to do some upgrades probably in the laboratories in that building as well. There's now more common, we run into these large snow events, these folks work by contract 12 consecutive hours, up to 18 hours, and, we prefer they not then get in a vehicle and drive somewhere and have to bring them back, so bunking them in a safe facility. If this was truly tear down and start again in 30 million, you'd be talking about pretty sophisticated kitchens and bunking facilities and, almost like a fire station in some
Yeah, I was gonna say.
ways,
So you're gonna trigger a bunch of ADA stuff though, just by more than 25% or something?
Well, the question is whether or not it's a little bit of why there's some thought as we sort of chew it around in-house about the idea of this sort of separate building, and whether or not if you ran a separate building, you wouldn't necessarily have to attach it.
Right.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I'm thinking of the same.
Yes, so we're thinking about those things as a way of, so we take it, we don't attach the building because it's the administrative side.
Yeah.
You're dealing with, the what a back office and administrative community access, why does that building, I've worked in places where DPW sits in town hall, and we don't have the room for that.
Right.
But if you could put it adjacent to, outside of the buffer zone, not tripping off the ADA, make improvements on the building from a structural perspective to keep it viable, then, we've added 15 or 20 years life to a building rather than.
Yep.
And if you do a true modular building, I
Yeah.
only have experience with residential housing, you can have boxes delivered with all of the stuff in the walls.
Oh, sure.
And then you can lift them, when you're finished with the building, you can move it someplace else.
Yeah, there's this sort of cutoff between what I would call, I'm gonna not use the right term, so I wouldn't view this, although I would view this as possibly modular, early learning.
Not like
being
school
a
rooms,
better
though.
example.
Yes.
Yeah.
Those aren't, there's other sort of less, there are other facilities similar to that are more, that are constructed for the purpose of being relocated. This would not be that case. You'd want a little more of a permanent structure. You'd probably build the slab, you'd secure it to the slab different. Many years ago when I worked in Chelsea, we were rehabbing the police station. We built an entire police station of truly modular buildings.
How'd that go?
It was fine, because the state paid. So it was the great part about Chelsea, the state paid for everything. And then in the end, we literally, so we sold those, and they were neat facilities. This would be a little more permanent, more like.
This is more like a
it would be
prefab
permanent,
versus a
so-
modular.
Well,
Yeah.
that's why the early childhood center is.
It's great.
It's a brilliant solution, that's why I also did it, because you didn't have to touch the Atkinson school.
Yep.
You didn't have to sprinkle, you didn't do anything. So I would just say, and that experience was
Really good.
awesome.
Yeah.
It was
That's a great deal, for
fast.
those folks who, I know you have, but for folks who haven't been in the building, I mean, as soon as you close the door behind you, you just feel like you're just in a, it's a really neat building, so. And like you said, the construction period's shorter, well, the off-site construction period can be fairly lengthy. The gym is the Kittredge gym is a modular, sort of metal constructed building that, that was components with
Panelized.
off-site, panelized, yeah.
Yeah, right.
So I think that's a real possibility here, we sit that in front, we create, that, and then use the existing building, because we won't have to worry about that. I think that's, we're gonna have to sort of be talked off that ledge by the engineers or architects who say, listen, you shouldn't do that, and here's why. But I would expect that that's a possible outcome here. Not a bad, very good outcome. You may have noticed the Stevens Estate Enterprise Fund, I don't know if it's been touched upon, so,
Yes. Yes.
great.
Good earning.
Yeah, we're actually, so not unlike the others,
Good economy.
retained earnings, financial policy items, what we said to the staff up there and to the Stevens State Board was, when they had achieved so many months' worth of operating capital, they use the excess to reinvest back in the building and the business. It can't just be the business, it has to be the building too, because we've been funding the building for a while. And they came up with a nice multiple-year plan to reinvest those dollars. We think it's possible that those dollars will be greater than the $300,000 identified, but the idea was that, stop.
From a marketing standpoint, I mean, who's using it now?
It's pretty much the same group, it's weddings and functions. There's been, under the new director and with some prodding by Erica Ford, Community and Economic Development Director, we're trying to get into the business, so corporate meetings. There's not a lot of use during the day, and so, sort of weekday during the day, so expanding the use for sort of that kind of smaller corporate. If you have staff there and they're operating a building.
Well, that it used to be very much in vogue to have,
Yeah.
to do that.
Yeah, New Balance has used it a few times. My husband at New Balance has used it, but it's getting too small.
Yeah.
And then they went to Merrimack, but Merrimack just shut them down as well.
Fairbank is shutting everybody down out
Yes,
of
they are.
Rogers, yeah.
That's right.
Yep.
They're done.
Their uses become, have a lot of business, so they're kicking a lot of groups out right now. So it has its limits, yeah, it's really, yeah, but that's not a,
That's
so
the
we,
point, business during the day is good.
it's good.
And then there's catering.
So that's, and, we should be realistic. The Stevens Estate is operating just fine. It's about where it is going to be. We are booking a lot of events, unless we're gonna invest and change the facility in some way and allow for a different kind of use. We're reaching a relative point of saturation in terms of revenue generation. It's a guess, but last year was 450-ish. We did have a year in the early part of 2005 that took close to 7 or 8. But I think there's all kinds of factors there and a few indictments too. So we don't really, I would say that, I would say maybe 100 to 200,000 more annually would probably cap it out unless we changed, really fundamentally changed. The risk up there on a completely off the topic event is the carriage house needs $2 million, and my position is, unless we really know what the use is, there is no benefit in spending $2 million. It's a really neat building, so we'll continue to explore sort of opportunities for that building, but it would require someone to come in and.
What's in there now, residential units on top or something?
No, it's just sort of, it was a barn, it was both the horse barn, and then it
Yeah.
was a sort of retreat facility, and right now, it's just sort of, back to the studs, and
Oh,
Yeah, I know, it's not, it's, and you get, so we've, with you guys' support, we, see some CPC dollars, put some, put some
So
dollars.
just
into it.
stabilize it at this point. is
Yeah,
it?
yeah, it's neat, it's big.
I know.
It's really big, but it's,
Doesn't the emergency group work out of there?
no, the
The-
emergency
the
management, we spent, we put a few dollars into the, that's the garage, the garage up there.
Oh.
So replaced the door, added electricity, did some things to store their vehicle up there, and they use that to a certain extent. But that building, requires a community conversation about.
Not many know about it, probably.
Yeah, we need to, we're coming close to the point that we'll have this, like, a broader community conversation around. It's gone. Specify?
Yeah, just a couple of high level
Sure.
to the, capital budget. I'm just wondering what's next. When the last facility master plan building, the senior center is built, we go down to maintenance, street and getting a new dump truck there and here and so yeah, what's next? And actually,
Good question.
can we afford what's next? I mean, if we want to keep at 5%, the facility master plan kind of limits us now going forward because of the debt service for a couple of years. Can we afford another 20 million plan over 5 years? Moving in, and what would that be?
Yeah.
So.
So that's a great question. So, in the plan, it calls for bringing on a consultant to evaluate the prospect of what we would call facility master plan two. What could be in that is the possibility of more substantial work at the library, not yet needed, but maybe needed in the long term.
Can't expand.
We think the possibility of some improvements to the youth center, possible expansion, but really, you're dealing with a wood frame structure, a nice building, but maybe some dollars there. Second fire station will now be, by that point, 40 years old. And some of that's maintenance, it's not a big building. None of these buildings I would see is requiring the, sort of tear down, we're not talking about that, but, and then we're gonna probably deal with another phase of, the middle school needs some interior improvement, and at least one of the other elementary schools is probably gonna require some work, either on a modular expansion, or some other improvements. I've said to those who've asked, and I appreciate the question, that it cannot be the $25 million facility master plan initially. And it shouldn't be, because we're doing more in preventive maintenance. Took a big bite out of the deferred maintenance, and some of that was before the facility master plan with this building as well. We'll have done a lot of big ticket items, and I don't see taking down the second fire station and building a new one. It's simply, a reno job and whatever the costs are. So I would expect that the facility master plan 2 would not be more than 50% of the facility master plan 1. So that, I think, in and of itself will keep it in a reasonable spot in terms of debt service roll-off. We continue to support aggressive debt service roll-off, faster than, we pay off a debt service faster than what we're allowed to try to keep debt service low. And then all of this is subject to the impact on what will be increased interest rates. So part of the reason of the 5% was that we have a policy which says it's really 4 to 6%. It just didn't seem to me that in the best interest rate climate in the history of the free world,
Right.
that we needed to be at 5.5%. It seemed like, given our ability to do work, in other words, our capacity to do work, 5.5% seemed high because the interest rates were so low. So what we found was, we were approving projects, but we didn't have the skill to complete the projects, the capacity, organizational capacity to complete the projects. We made a conscious effort of only asking for things we really could get done. That drove the percentage down. And then we aligned the roll-off of existing debt with the need for the facility master plan. So we literally took that 10-year period, and we prioritized the projects, not just based on need, but how that debt service for that project fit into the roll-off to make sure we stay below the 5%. So we will need to go over the 5% to do even a facility master plan 2 of 10 to 12 million. But I'm not, if 50 basis points is a function of interest rates, then we say that. We did what we needed to do, we've traveled well, we're staying, I'm not afraid of a 6% load of debt service to budget, it's well within all safe limits. It just didn't seem necessary to carry 6% when interest rates are low, because it meant we were asking for stuff we weren't building. We had cases here where we were approving projects, they weren't being built or delivered in 3 or 4 years. We're a tax exempt entity, that means we're subject to arbitrage. We should only be asking for what we can do in 18 months. And I think that's one of the benefits of the plan is we're delivering on these items, top to bottom. We're spending these dollars. That has helped us bring debt service down appropriately. So I would expect debt service is gonna climb as a percentage, above the 5%. But I didn't think it made some sense to do that while the interest rates are low. But interest rates are going up. Now, if interest rates go through the roof, it may hold up all kinds of stuff, right?
Well, you warned us before. You said
Yeah.
if the rates go crazy, we're just gonna stop.
Yeah, we have to be, it's multiple fold. So it's the impact on debt service and it's the construction environment, right? So if construction costs double from where they are today on a cost per square footage basis and your interest rates are up, you have to do less. And so the decision we'll have to make when we come before you in that case is, where is the priority, right? Because you can't have it all. So where is the priority? Is the priority that we continue on roads? Is the priority we continue on technology? Is the priority we cut everything by 50% and feel like we got a little bit of everything? At this point, I think we feel like we can carry a facility master plan 2, I'll conservatively say at about $10 million over a handful of projects, over a 5 to 7 year basis. I think we can do that. But they're smaller stuff. Middle school, I think, is $1.5 million. I think will be some estimate, maybe 2. It's not, not really going down.
There's no need for excluded debt.
No,
No.
I don't promote plans with excluded debt. That's a different conversation for, I don't say that in any way that's meant to be, political. This plan is not ever gonna assume excluded debt. And if it gets to the point that we can't afford it, then the community has to say, geez, we wanna do it anyway, and that's a community conversation. I'm not driving that conversation by jacking up a plan that we can't afford. But we think, we feel okay about a couple of smaller projects.
It was interesting, the one thing that I noticed was looking out at the schools over the past couple of years and the school improvements. I went back to the full 250-page facilities master plan. And one of the things that I noticed was, and I think it's definitely worth a revisit because we're 5 years on, but one of the things I noticed was programmatically, at the time they did the facilities master plan, there's only one sheet in there on the elementary schools. It's a spreadsheet on like page 247, and it goes through programmatically what's needed at each school, and it comes up with a round price tag of 14 million. And so, but then in the plan it recommended about 1. So I think that's an area we should, that probably needs to be revisited. And I understand, I read the programmatic needs. It was like a classroom here, a classroom there, and pretty soon you're talking real money. So and it was kind of interesting to go back and look at it. But it was interesting because I'm not even sure how that, if you remember, that would be good intel. 'Cause I don't remember how
I arrived with the facility master plan in draft form.
That's right.
With the draft having been issued 9 months earlier, the committee not having met for several periods because they didn't quite know how to take this draft and make it a reality. So I arrived really post
analysis.
The only change I had a hand in. 2 things I had a hand in was the compelling conversation for the need for a Kittredge gym, which was never discussed,
Right.
and the method of financing. Other than that, the plan existed. The method of financing also influenced the ordering of the projects.
Right.
Because the ordering, as I originally saw it in 2010 or 11, was a much different order.
Right.
And so there was a committee, meeting charged the committee with doing whatever it needs to do. I see this as a little bit different. I really see this as almost like like an amendment to the existing plan.
Right.
If there's a community interest to wanna turn this leaf and look at $10 to $20 million, I can tell you, the plan can't afford it. That's a
Right.
community-wide dialogue that.
Oh, yeah, no, I think it's good,
A different sort of channel, I think. I
Yeah.
have, my role is to keep this plan within the framework of being able to pay for it.
Right.
And I see that as manageable in a 10 or 12 million, these are guesstimates, right? But I see that as manageable in a $10 to $12 million range. We get beyond that, or interest rates, you know.
It's gonna throw everything off balance.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's always a balance, but, you know, when you're looking 5 years out, you can also dream a little bit, you know, where
Yeah,
does the
yeah.
town,
Right.
you know,
Agreed.
wanna be in 2030 and 40, you know, do we need more, I don't know, sports facilities, more for senior facilities, you know, more green stuff, more solar, more electric mobility, you know, I mean, all these themes are popping up now, you know, and,
Well, and I think part of the reason I'm placing some dollars in there, the mistake would be to be, and we champion this facility master plan, all of us, we had communities who call us and say, geez, how did you do this? Okay, won't reveal one of those communities, it's one that we often are told that we're not as good as. So I think you're right. Part of the reason of thinking about facility master plan too is to say, it's not good enough to say, geez, we got this, oh, I got these 7 buildings done, it's really cool. It's an opportunity to sort of jump off from that. Like everything else, it's a balance around, certain conversations take place, in my opinion, that are a broader community conversation. So I agree with you. I think we have a huge project coming up. That's the redevelopment, the rebuild, the recreation of the space sitting between the middle school and the early learning center. We've had preliminary meetings, CPC has funded some preliminary dollars. We're gonna do some, working with a working committee to come up with really 5 or 6 broad plans. That's a in my guesstimate, $4 to $7 million rework of one of the largest open space. Given its location, it's ideal for community space. You know, I could envision a pedestrian walking path and some ball fields, multi-generational, multi-purpose space. And that's on the radar screen more for the CPC. But the question will be, if it's $4 to $7 million, is it phased with funding of the CPC? Do we include it in a different way? So we continue to remain focused on and embrace creative ideas to want to do things. I don't think we're I know you're not suggesting that, but we continue to look at different ways to try to do things.
Well, I think some of the discussion around Stevens Library, right, there's a community committee that's looking at that, sort of generate the ideas and the discussion about where a library fits in the community. What does that mean?
Who's doing that?
That's the library, no, not the commission, that's the.
The trustees are currently looking at
Trustees, the trustees.
As I understand it, the trustees are currently looking at the interior space, not the, that's what the 10-1 meeting was described to me, so that they're wondering whether or not the interior space is conducive to how libraries work.
But it's really about what that building is.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same thing. I mean, inside, outside, it's a facility that we own as a community. What do we want it to do? Where's it connected? How's it connected? That's a big discussion. And may or may not involve a lot of dollars, but I think that's, if you're saying looking ahead. The only place, I think the place, Andrew set up a process here which sort of gives the opportunity for groundswell for people to come together, as opposed to, somebody banging on the door saying, we gotta have this, or we don't want this at all. And so I think that's the value of this process,
Yes, I think that's the goal, right? So it's, everybody should, we ask for as many people to get involved as possible and to throw the ideas into the sort of churn, right? And come up with it, because what, the failure in a lot of municipalities, not referencing here, I wasn't here, the failure in a lot of municipalities is it's these one-off requests. And then people maybe get passionate about it, a particular project, when it comes to a town meeting and it passes, because it's, the crowd is rallying. Yet in the context, if it was presented without all of the passion and they were given a series of choices that may not have been, maybe they would have picked these 2 but not this one. And so the idea really is to remain sort of focused on putting these into the mix and trying to sort of see what comes. It really is, the facility master plan would have failed only because they hadn't figured out that if you just rearranged the order of the projects, there was more support than how they were originally proposed. And that's not a criticism to the committee, it was a function of working with a consultant and then realizing there's a time that the consultant has to stop and the community has to get re-engaged. And the consultant had rolled out this plan and it was a perfectly valid consultant-like reasoning for it, but it would have really struggled as a plan if we didn't deal with how it fit into debt service and address the Kittredge issue and do others. So I think all those things, we should not, certainly should not stop thinking about what the community needs.
I need to ask a somewhat dumb question.
No, not done that.
Well, no, it could be. The Facilities Master Plan 2 is scheduled for 2020 and 21.
Yep.
First question on that. Is that take into account economic development? Like Eric spoke at a last meeting
Sure.
to us about that. So is that the money for the consultant and what he was talking about working on?
Eric doesn't work on the facility master plan, so I'm not sure what the link, it's not a dumb question, I just want to make sure I answer.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking it. So Eric came last
Yeah.
month and he talked about something else. It wasn't facilities. Economic development plan and kind of looking out, but spending a year or maybe two developing a master
Correct.
economic plan.
Sure.
Where is money in here for that?
Well, because what he was, so one of the things that I've asked Eric to do, in fact, he's meeting with the planning board currently, talking about that. Well, one of the things I've asked that Eric submit as part of his operating budget is dollars for a consultant to facilitate the updating of our master plan. It's not really a capital project, because a master plan is a planning, when you, master plan in the concept of planning is a document with no physical assets attached. It's all, what do you, it's a
Right,
vision.
right.
We were talking about.
That's what we were talking about at the very beginning.
So-
That's 15 years
So
old.
that's why it's not in
So
the
it's,
CIP.
it's not that,
Thank you.
because it's not a capital, it's a
That's a
visioning
good-
document, right? So one of the, so what I've asked Eric to do as part of his priorities within his budget is submit, some, it's not a game-changing amount of money to have a consultant facilitate the process of starting what I believe will be 18 months to 2 years to take our 2000 master plan. It's really the 1998 master plan with a few punctuation changes made into the 2000 plan and update that to represent what the community should look like over the next 30 or 40 years. So that'll be, that, you'll see that in the operating budget. Those two items on the end of this plan, the first year is to bring on a consultant to start to give us that, start to evaluate that priority list for what the next facility plan would look like.
Yeah.
And the 250 represents what we believe to be, again, using the same philosophy, the design component of the first project. So they're placed, that's truly a placeholder. So if the first project was assumed to be a $2.5 million something, then that 250 represents 10%, or the OPM and design costs for that something yet to be determined.
Yeah, I was wondering why, separate from Eric, why that was so far out. Like, why wouldn't that be in
Yeah.
2017 or 18?
Yeah, in this case, we're still, we need to roll off more data and finish off the programs.
Yes, and that's what you're saying, being fiscal
Yep,
tight.
so you'll see some dollars, I forget, I don't know exactly what Eric's, I haven't seen his budgets yet, but Eric will request dollars from his budget to bring on someone to help him with a master plan, which is really by statute the planning board's job. So the planning board will, but our job is to work with the planning board to get it there. So, we're gonna do a master plan.
And I'm assuming that that'll be a process too, where there'll probably be a lot of input from the
Yes.
town.
Yes, the master planning process, if done right, is probably the most inclusive process, in my experiences of municipal government. So we may very well, with whoever we bring on, because we've had trouble hiring a planner, but we've had people coming in and out of the planning role. Traditionally, you'd see a consultant come in with 4 or 5 folks who would do regular visioning sessions under the, sort of our direction, and then have a visioning session on economic development, they'd have one on open space, they'd have one on, certain sections of the town, so and community would be invited. You'd send out the robocalls, community's invited, the conversation tonight will be X. You do a whiteboard exercise where people come in and they throw ideas against that whiteboard, and over time you sort of filter that down to ultimately end up having a master plan. Yep.
I have to excuse myself, I got coordinate pickup with a.
Great.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Thank you.
I just have a quick question. This is just, and it could be a misunderstanding. Between pages 1 and 2, I'm noticing the this, year one, the totals are different, and I can't figure out why. So if you come down on page one.
in one.
Yeah, we have
one and
7.732. Yeah, 750.
Okay, page 2 is the requested projects.
Okay.
The departments requested
Ah.
this, and then page 1 is what Andrew's recommending.
Oh,
What the
okay.
requests were, that's why they're different.
They're different.
Just with the, so
All right,
one's a
I've
department
already
request.
explained that.
That we're recommending.
The actual
Right.
projects, when you were looking at them, like Bruce had asked for 197
Right,
for that
okay.
particular piece of equipment, but Andrew was only recommending 185.
Okay, so like the
To make up
forestry
the difference.
vehicle is just coming off completely.
So what's your basis for, the guy comes in with
Yes.
a hard
So that's the
quote,
difference,
Yeah,
okay?
well, okay, yeah, I
and
see.
you say, oh, that's good, I'm not gonna, you gotta pay for some of it out of your operating budget. What's your basis of thinking there? I mean, it's not, I'm not in disagreement with
That's
that at all.
right.
I'm just kinda curious.
Well, we don't do that
The
quite as much.
forestry vehicle doesn't come in till
Sometimes.
5, so at first I thought, oh, that's the difference, but if you look at all these figures, they're identical.
I know
But
they're
there's a
not.
couple different.
You have 197, when you have only 185 over here.
Oh,
Not
okay,
identical.
you're right.
They're asking
Okay.
you their questions.
All right.
In the past, they did it in a
So-
different format. It was almost side by side, now it's page by page.
Yeah.
Recommended.
Yeah, which is
Okay.
the first.
It's recommended.
It was
It was
recommended a lot
requested.
more than you think.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
It used to be this
Now I
way.
got it.
The question
Yeah, we
is,
do it-
how do you get to the point where you make a change from page 2 to page 1?
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
the good news is, it's a great question,
Yes.
the good
It's a
news is
fight.
that the differences between page 2 and page 1 are now harder to find. It used to be that those differences, at one point, there were no differences, and we weren't completing the projects. Another time, there was huge differences, so now they're fairly close. So we get into really sometimes subtle conversations. There are times when, sometimes it's a hard quote, but it includes items that maybe, I can get a quote on a lot of stuff. And the things that I buy that I can get quotes on, I can also get options. And there are times that we have to just make sure that we think that those options are consistent with what we're trying to deliver as a product. And more often than not, we are pretty liberal in our interpretation of what the department needs as long as it's consistent. But there are other times we feel like there's a couple of requests in here where that the numbers include things. We either say to them, go into your operating budget, you really, really want that? Then, you know what, you have an operating budget with a lot of money in it. And so you have to make choices too. And those choices may be between, geez, I had 10,000 in this line item. I planned on spending it here. And it forces them, and we're not that, it's not draconian in any way, as you can tell, our relationships are great, we're good, but it forces them to make some of those choices. Is it important enough to you to take something out of your operating budget to pay for that versus what you originally were going to pay for? That kind of conversation is healthy with departments so that we don't get in capital planning dollars which include items which may not always be used. Options, traditionally, it's about options. It's not whether we're buying a good vehicle or a better vehicle or particular brands as part of procurement rules.
It's
It's
the
really about
FM
something.
stereo.
I was gonna say, it's like the sports package in
All the bells
the.
and
Unless it's
whistles.
included.
Sports package,
Yeah.
the tech package in the car.
Yeah.
It's sometimes about those value-added items. So we get quotes, we can call, if it's a rolling stock, we call the company and say, what's your base model? And then we say, what's this and
And
what's
then
that.
we got added on.
Yeah, so.
Wants and needs again.
So we take a fairly,
I mean, you're not cutting a lot of money out, I was just kinda curious.
No.
That's all.
yeah.
Quick question, Lynn. I've probably asked this before and forgotten what it is. The excluded debt, is there a time we know, when's that rolling off? Or-
I mean, if it phases out, I don't
Yeah.
even remember when the last.
I know we brought it
18,
up.
19, 25.
What's
Yeah.
that?
18, 19, and 25.
18, 19, 25.
19 being at the bigger tranche. So you're gonna see close to 70 or 75% of it go away
Way.
before 2020.
Wow. And we don't anticipate adding anything to it.
No.
We're not proposing that we add anything
Yeah.
to this good debt. But my.
I just wanna get you
Yeah.
quoted on camera. Try to pin you down as much as I can.
Right.
It would be nice to have a period of no excluded debt.
That's great.
We just, again, we have our own limits. We have great staff and people who do a lot of really good stuff. but I think I've said before, even if we had unlimited funding, we couldn't do unlimited work.
No.
I mean, even the roadway, right, even the roadway project you have here, which is remarkably thoughtful, if you double that number, I couldn't put out the contracts fast enough, I couldn't oversee them, I couldn't manage them.
Right.
We'd get twice as many roadways done, probably in the first year, and everybody would be excited. By the second year, we're gonna be behind, something's gonna happen on that. And, because we can't manage them, oversee them, or do them right.
Yeah.
So, this plan represents not just what we can afford, but what we can do and afford. It's both, and I would expect that this looks pretty close to what next year will look like rolling over the year. It's pretty close.
Wouldn't it be nice to have a regional sort of ESCO labor for penumbra
Another meeting for
of
them to go to?
contractors that were ready to descend
Jump in.
upon a whole town and do all of your projects for you?
That'd be great. That'd be great. Whatever they can provide us for some, there is some, there's a package recently filed by the governor with about 30 provisions on it to clean up a lot of sort of choppy stuff in municipal government, and a few of those are procurement related to raise some of the thresholds on procurement, which we really need to have happen.
Yeah, they're gonna be talking about that, the Mass Municipal
Yeah.
Association?
Sure. And it's so, there's a lot of good small items.
Things on that.
Yeah.
The procurement stuff really, it's just, it can be just really complicated.
So you like the portions of that,
Yes, I like all of it, but I know that I don't, there's one or two provisions I don't have any background or experience in that may be more school related.
Was there something about notice in that bill of town, of various
Public notices.
Yeah, public notice.
Like sale
Doesn't have to be
of
in the-
mortgagees real estate would no longer have to be advertised and
in the
print.
newspapers, but you could do it, yeah.
You can do it electronically.
Well, I
Yeah, it's all
mean,
about
really.
paperless.
I mean, a lot of the stuff can be done electronically. I mean, the bidding stuff is.
Absolutely.
It's just
Yeah,
doing that. We can
course
put stuff,
system.
some of the biddings now can put on the town's website as opposed to putting out some of the notices that we put out. I mean, some of the stuff is just, it's routine, but what happens is, digressing a little bit, what happens a little bit with this statute passes and it doesn't make any sense. With all the energy that goes into the legislative process to pass the statute, there's never any energy to repeal it. And then it sticks, and it sticks, and it goes on for 5 years, and 7 years, and 10 years, and 12 years. And if you look at that legislation that's been proposed by the governor, most of the things out there, from our perspective, municipal management, I just, and I said shit with Ray and Lynn, they're just common sense stuff that should have been repealed. We get a provision that says, Lynn knows this is like thorn on my side. There's a provision passed several years ago that says that we will, when a person works here 25 years and then goes somewhere else and works 5 years and then they retire and they then get a health insurance, the town that they went to and retired from can bill us for that health insurance, the 25/30ths of the health insurance. It makes sense, right? Well, why should they cover the whole burden? Except you realize that people generally in municipal business stay in municipal business. So that means we get the bill. And so it's a giant zero-sum game, right? We bill, they bill. And so what happened with 50 or 60% of the community since 2009 when this passed, they just didn't bill anybody. We didn't bill anybody. Because we're gonna bill and then send a bill. It's like, we're just passing dollars around.
Doing
Right.
it all is.
And,
Yeah, paperwork.
yeah, and there are one or two communities that sort of said, but it's the statute and we must do it, and you get a bill for $800 and you're like, and so it's one of those items that in the governor's bill, we work with a legislative delegation, I try to work with some legislators, our legislative delegation was great. The furthest we got was some traction to modify it, to really not, to make it marginally better, because the idea of getting the legislation to repeal something is complicated, yet it sits in this, in the governor's bill, it sits in the governor's bill for a straight repeal, and it's a common sense item. You get 50 or 60% of the community is not complying with the statute because they tell you it's useless. And it doesn't benefit you or I, or the taxpayer, or a business, it's
Money going around.
it's just money going around in
Yeah.
circles, yeah.
Labor
One
tax.
treasurer sends a bill, the other treasurer gets a bill, and maybe you're up $200. So my advocacy is, we have a $100 million budget, and we're shipping little bills off to one another, the big scheme of things. And so, it's a small item, but one of those items that's unusual, they're actually seeing some traction to repeal it.
So is this Governor Baker's Mr. Fix-It type of function? I mean, he's going into all of these cogs and wheels, probably not himself,
Probably not.
But he's seen to it that somebody has.
Yeah, they're focused on municipal
Kicked the
stuff.
right,
Yeah,
they kicked the right places.
I mean, from our perspective.
Were you saying that you worked on that?
I worked with the lieutenant governor on, there was a group of us, about 10 or 12, that
okay.
worked with the lieutenant governor, on what they call the community.
Take it a motion to adjourn.
One last real question?
Lynn, yes.
I have one, so, go.
Fine.
I won't miss
Okay.
a quorum if I go, so.
All right, so
It
we're-
would count.
Good night.
Thank you so much.
Just real quick to get the.
we're in the lightning round now.
Lightning
So,
round.
Lightning round.
All questions?
Okay.
Underlay.
To get the connection to, our rating, and I think, I remember, one is how fast you pay down your debt.
Yes.
Goes in there. Are there any change, what's our average debt maturity right now and
Oh,
going
I
forward?
sort of understand.
Are we gonna increase it?
Our average debt maturity is somewhere around 11. I'm gonna get this, we pull this data together every 1 or 2 years. So on that schedule, you'll see some 5s, some 10s, and some 20s. We never go to the 20s. We borrow, we may hit 17, 18, we look at the market, so we're never going to the 20 that you see on that plan. So part of that percentage, Lynn Oster always reminds me of this, those percentages aren't real either, because those are assuming we're borrowing for the full length of time. And so.
And at a higher interest rate, those
Right.
are higher than what we actually are
We're
getting for an
assuming
interest rate.
4%. We're assuming
Well,
100 basis points over the market.
Yeah.
So by assuming 100 basis points over the market, we're able to shorten the life of the payback. And so our average life to maturity is, you asked that question 2 years ago.
Yeah, I
I
did.
forget what it was. Where-
Yeah, and you gave me a, yeah.
So the 5s are coming in at like 3, the 10s are coming in at like 7, everything is a few years lower than.
Accelerated.
Yeah, we accelerated it.
Are there any updates on the rating, or when are they,
Won't know
their
until
next
maybe
review?
May,
Let's
June.
go back out again.
May.
So the last time, we pushed heavily for an upgrade. It is an organizational goal to reach AAA. It'd be the first time in the history of the community we're going to AAA. We had AAA plus with a neutral outlook. We have gotten them to move to a positive outlook. We've had one upgrade in the last 5 years from AA to AA plus. What they say is all the fundamentals are AAA. You now need to show us 3, 4, 5 years of sustainability at those levels. So your fundamentals, check the box off. But it's the first time you're asking and you haven't been there. And so you have to prove that what you've done isn't a fluke, it's part of a plan. And we tell them it's part of the plan. And they see it's part of the plan, and they see all the numbers go in the right direction. But we feel like we're right there. And AAA would be huge for this town. We've never been AAA. It puts us with places like all those places we talked about that have those kind of ratings, Andover, Allstate, those kind of places. So they're hearing us, they moved us up to a positive outlook, and we feel optimistic about that opportunity.
And it's helping us when we're focusing on the OPEB now, where we move that 500,000 into the PRIT for investment. So
Right.
we'll see where that goes and what type of investment that brings. And if we continue to contribute, I mean, they want to see that.
Yeah, that was a big item for the bond.
It was real big.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yep. Well, see what happens with the investments next year, just as if there wasn't much money in it this year.
Wasn't a great market either.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Do your periodic financials include a comparison of your fiscal year 16 planned capital improvements to actuals?
Have I done any?
Yeah, well,
No.
I'm just I was actually asking a question that could embarrass me, because I know you say, hey, we have the quarters out or whatever.
Yep.
But I went into our FinCom Dropbox and
There's no financial reporting.
There's no financial
Yeah,
reporting.
that's I did produce one for the first quarter for the Board of Selectmen. It's not as condensed as the prior system. I'll load it into the,
Oh,
it's
okay.
many more
We're working on
pages.
the reporting.
We're working on the
So
reporting.
it exists, we're working on the reporting. system.
Munis provides us with a lot of data, and it's good data. It's just, the report writing is a complex report writer. So, I've been focusing on making sure everything's balanced and everybody's meeting budget and things like that. I haven't had much time to design the reports, but I can put in what I have. It's just a lot of pages. It's very busy.
I wasn't doing anything
Okay.
tonight.
Some good luck reading the Bible.
And I'll be reducing the second quarter financials, probably in 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay, good, thanks.
Motion to adjourn.
Got better.
Good, second, all in favor?
Second that motion.
Susan.